Yeah. On Zelda Dungeon? I Wait, you mean they like actually combined the two channels? I need to check this out. Yeah. Wait, but there's... No, I'm at ZeldaInformer.com and ZeldaDungeon.net. No. Oh, when you open a Zelda Informer article, it takes you to Zelda Dungeon. Okay. I remember like a one-on-one I was talking to Nate whenever he was let go, and he mentioned something like this was going to happen, but Mossy's was keeping it a secret from a lot of the other people that was working at Zelda Informer because he didn't want them to think of it as like a mass takeover. So yeah. Yeah. I never really realized how big Zelda Informer was, or not Zelda Informer, but Zelda Dungeon, until I was talking to someone I was friends with from high school, and they were like, "Yeah, I check Zelda Dungeon all the time for help," and I'm like, "Really?" And then like I explained like, "Oh, I used to like be in charge of the entire news team." And they were like, "Oh, I probably read a bunch of your articles," and I was like, "It's really weird, cause it is the most popular Zelda website in the world." So, and now, yeah, well, technically now Mossy's owns two of the most popular, because I think it used to be Zelda Dungeon, and then it was Zelda Informer, and Zelda Universe. They've had issues with writers not being as productive, so they've just like kept going down, but they're still really great. The people that do stick around, like Amanda who does the news, they're really great. It's just like the, I guess, freelance writers they get don't stick around too long. But anyways, we can start the podcast. We have 12 people watching. For everybody watching, this will be recorded with Daniel, who you should be able to hear. Actually, I think I have to set it up so they can hear you. They probably think I'm talking to myself. Yeah. Alright. Yes. If you can hear Daniel, please let us know. Settings. Let's see here. I think... Okay, so this takes like 2 seconds to fix. All I have to do...
Jesse, now I can't hear you.
No, I'm just not talking.
Well, that's why.
Alright. Let's see here. Let's do 800. Alright, say something.
Something.
Alright, try 1500.
Okay, they can hear me now.
Okay.
Yeah, so do we want to add the Zelda Informer news onto our news roundup here? Or?
We can. Yeah, we can.
All right. I'm gonna just put it into our Google Doc. Yes, friends, we use Google Docs. That's how official we are.
All right, restarting my recording. All right, and are we ready?
Oh, am I too loud?
He says you're too loud, but that's my fault. Whenever I was raising your audio.
Okay.
Let's see here.
All right.
Advanced audio properties. We can turn you from 1500 to 1200. Okay, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. So I had just muted my mic while I was typing.
Okay.
Just because otherwise it gets pretty loud, you know. But 1 sec here.
All right, we are ready. As soon as you come back, 500 would be plenty. Yeah, so whenever you're ready, just let me know, and then we will begin. For everybody watching, until we begin, the podcast discussion videos that you always find where we answer fan-submitted questions or talk about the news, and it's me, Daniel, last week it was Orion up in the corner, and then there's gameplay at the bottom of the videos. Those are part of our Hylian Gamescast, which we are recording right now, but like we did once before, we are doing it live. So we may not be interacting with you until we get to the Q&A, because we have to get through the news as best we can. So, all right, are we ready?
I am ready, yes.
All right. Actually, one more thing. I apologize. Don't hate me. I
don't hate you.
All right, I'm going to check to make, since I am recording and live streaming at the same time, I'm just going to make sure that it's recording properly, because I don't want to ruin everything if it Alright, let's see here.
I am ready, yes.
Alright, actually, one more thing. I apologize. Don't hate me. Okay, yeah, it's good.
Okay.
Alright, start recording. I'm ready. Are you recording?
I have been recording for 9 minutes.
Alright.
Actually, should I just, maybe I'll just restart my recording, because it's just a bunch of preamble at this point.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do. 1 second here.
Just let me know whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Okay.
Alright.
And I'm good to go.
Alright. What's up, everybody? I am Jesse, or Game Over Jesse as some of you all may know me, and here with me, as always, except last week, is Daniel, our faithful co-host. Go ahead and introduce yourself for the people watching at home.
Welcome, friends watching at home. And if you're watching this live or not live, I appreciate you equally.
Yeah. All right. So this is the Hylians Gamescast. I think episode 11. We have some great news to get to. Ubisoft created a Wind Waker Game Boy Advanced demo that didn't get made, obviously. Nintendo Power returns, but only for Daniel and the rest of the people in Canada. There is no more DLC coming to Breath of the Wild, and our favorite Zelda websites, Zelda Informer and Zelda Dungeon, have finally fully merged together after the buyout from King Mossy's. And then we end the show, as always, with questions sent in from viewers like yourself from Patreon, Discord, and left in the YouTube comments of the past Zelda mailbag videos. And before we get started, we have some very important introductions for some of our Patreon sponsors for this video. We have George Martinez, Casey Willis, Rusty Caulfield, Robbie Morgan, Shadow to Us, Lovable Christie, Key of Time 15, Lunarium, and new Patreon supporters, Megan Neal and Tight Lipped Gaming. Thank you all for your support on Patreon, and for those of you who may not know, we also finally have some Game Over Jesse shirts and jackets available, but we're going to be coming up with some other logos in the future. So if you want to
I like that shirt though. I want it. Yes. I will wear it every time I record if I get one.
All right. So starting off our first piece of news, since we were talking about it before the show, let's continue. Zelda Informer merges fully with Zelda Dungeon. Now, for those who don't know, before I had my YouTube channel, I used to write for Zelda Dungeon. Then I took a long break, started writing for Zelda Universe. That was when I started my YouTube channel, and then I made videos and a couple of articles for Zelda Informer. So I have experience with all three of the major Zelda websites. Daniel here has experience with Zelda Informer, and then Zelda Dungeon as well, but only because of the buyout.
Yeah. So when I came on board, I think it was shortly after they had merged, or shortly after that buyout had happened, and that's actually how Jesse and I became friends. Is that I was working on YouTube videos for Zelda Informer. I think we were both guests on the podcast for Zelda Informer with Nate and Alfred, and then at some point, with various Twitter interactions, we just ended up. Life took us here, so. But we do have kind of Zelda Informer to thank for that, and that was I don't really have experience with Zelda Dungeon except for I did used to I still occasionally do check something on the guides for it. Usually I'll check something if I'm fact checking my own videos that I'm working on. But otherwise, like I mostly used to use Zelda Informer as a community site and news site before I even worked there. So
yeah, Zelda Dungeon for me is very special because it was what introduced me to the Zelda community. Whenever I was first actively searching and looking for information on what would become Skyward Sword, it was originally known as just Zelda Wii. And I would look up a lot of information on it, and I would watch videos and everything. And then when I was looking at YouTube videos at the time that weren't nearly as great as the news videos on Zelda that you can find now, there's just texts on the screen, and from there I ended up finding first I want to give a shout out. It was Earthbounding64 was the YouTube channel that all inspired me to do my Zelda news videos, but also inspired McIntyre from McIntyre Productions to start his YouTube channel.
Oh wow!
Because he copied
very influential.
Yeah, he copied the same format, taking in rumors, news, interviews, everything that you could find, and fan submitted stuff every week, and then putting it all into one video that would come out on a specific day at a very specific time. And he kind of took the entire pattern, or whatever you want to call it, the schedule from the one website, but he would add actual gameplay and stuff instead of actual words on the screen. And then talking to him was what influenced me into doing mine as well. So we both have that YouTube channel to thank, but because of that YouTube channel, I stumbled across Zelda Dungeon. And I started writing for Zelda Dungeon. After a few weeks, I was put in charge as news coordinator. Was the title, or co-news coordinator. It was myself and another who it was basically our job to make sure the news channel was posting videos at a certain time every day, training new people that was coming on and everything, even though I was never really a great writer. So I was very thankful to Mossies for that, putting the other co-worker and I in charge. But I think it wasn't necessarily because I was a good writer. I think it was just because at that time I was dependable. So but yeah, I was thankful for that. And then whenever I came back, I started writing for Zelda Universe, and then wanted something different from that, and Zelda Informer was really the only serious Zelda website that's on the same level as the other two. So I started writing for them, and then that was especially easy because Mossies had bought Zelda Informer at that time. And then there was people talking back and forth in the background, the alleys behind the buildings, about like Zelda Informer, I think there was a couple of people that mentioned Zelda Informer was just going to go away. And then it was just going to be like Zelda Dungeon. And going to Zelda Informer would redirect you to Zelda Dungeon. So that's where this
that's kind of what's happening now. Because, I mean, they made this big post about the sites. Well, they posted it saying it's an update. But really, it's the merging that is the content of the post. It's not really an update. It's just that all of the Zelda Informer content is now going to be on Zelda Dungeon, and Zelda Informer will just redirect you, and that's it. The site's basically gone, right?
So before this happened, Zelda Dungeon became primarily just dungeons, dungeon guides and stuff, and then it had its own editorial articles. But for news, Zelda Dungeon completely stopped doing news, and Zelda Informer was the site to go to for news, rumors, theories, everything else. But now they're merging into one super dominant thing, which I know people who 100% love Zelda Informer but dislike Zelda Dungeon. I know people like who are vice versa and love Zelda Dungeon and don't like Zelda Informer, whether it's because of a bad experience with some of the community at the different websites or if it's just like a problem with the web layout, whatever. I'm not really sure, but people do have the websites they prefer. So personally, I see this as, like, right now, I guess it's too early to tell, but I don't necessarily think it's that great of an idea. I would try to have both websites putting out their own original news and everything, kind of almost competing with each other. Like for people who watch WWE, like SmackDown and Raw, where they're both the same thing, but they're in competition with themselves because there's no one else that like ranks up to their level. To whereas if you have two big websites that puts out articles or whatever, then when someone searches, you have twice the chance of someone clicking on it, as opposed to if there's just one and people see that it's Zelda Dungeon has this, the people who never really liked Zelda Dungeon are going to scroll down, go to Nintendo Life, go Nintendo, IGN, or wherever. To whereas if it was Zelda Informer, Zelda Dungeon, and then the other websites like IGN, you have twice the chance of someone clicking on your thing. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll see.
It might just be for ease, like on the staff end of things. It might just be easier to maintain one big site than to maintain two of these very popular, huge sites, you know?
Yeah.
That's just my guess. Like, it just is probably to make it easier for them to run it.
Yeah.
But
and then
I don't know, like,
financial, it may be easier just to like pay for hosting and servers for one website than for two.
Yeah. But as far as running them goes, I believe that they had like different manager teams on the two sites, right? I mean, at least when I was there, it was like Nate and Darren were running pretty much just Zelda Informer, and they had nothing to do with Zelda Dungeon, except for that the two sites were associated.
Yeah, and then
Zelda Dungeon had its own team. This is before Nate left and went on to create Nintendo Prime, but
and then Darren left a few weeks after, I guess. And then we had Andy.
Yeah, and Andy's taking on a lot there he's taking Zelda Informer, but now it's Zelda Dungeon as well.
And he took over Darren's spot, right?
Yeah, okay. And I mean he's doing great work there, and you know he mentions
this is
in
the
article
he should have been on.
This is actually he wrote the article explaining the merge, right?
Yeah,
and you know he seems to feel positive about it.
For the Zelda community, this is the equivalent of like just this past week when Disney bought Fox.
Yeah, that's pretty much what this is for Zelda fans.
Like you get the X-Men and the Marvel Avengers universe, and this time you get Zelda Informer with the Zelda Dungeon universe.
Yeah. But when I was working at Zelda Informer, not Darren, Andy was like brand new. He had just come on like a month or two after I started working there, and it's funny to see him being one of the lead writers there now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like he's been there for over a year now though, and he's been doing really good work there, and if he feels positive about this merge, then like I support it because I know that he has good judgments. But I don't know, it feels weird to me because it's almost like goodbye to Zelda Informer as a whole. I know they'll still have a social media presence in their own way, but it'll be different now.
Yeah, and the thing for me is that Zelda Informer and Zelda Dungeon, those are the perfect names for websites to where, like, if you want anything about dungeons, it's in the title. You know what to expect.
Yeah, like, you're looking for a walkthrough, you're stuck in the dungeon,
and then
go to Zelda Dungeon.
Yeah, and if you want news or rumors on something, Zelda Informer, it has Informer on it, so that you automatically know, oh, Informer, they're informing me of all of the info, the news, the rumors, everything that comes up. So, yeah, and then, like, thinking back on it, when I used to write for Zelda Dungeon, and then even when I was writing for Zelda Universe, Zelda Informer, all three of them really, there were people there like me who liked all three of the websites. Like, they would be friends with like whoever was in charge of the other websites and the people writing there. But then there was the few people who was just like, oh no, Zelda Informer, they suck, they're horrible, they steal articles and put their names on it. But then those same people at Zelda Informer, there was a few that would be like, oh yeah, Zelda Universe, Zelda Dungeon, they'll steal your articles. And for the longest time, it was the biggest, like, there was those were like the small, like the minority of the websites, to where like, the larger picture was, I remember for the 30th anniversary of Zelda's, I think it was Zelda Universe wrote this huge thing, like 30 years of The Legend of Zelda, and they would talk about all of the big things that happened from the first year of Zelda up until the release of Skyward Sword or the 30th anniversary of Zelda. And Zelda, I believe Zelda Dungeon and Zelda Informer would both like post like, hey, Zelda Universe is doing this huge editorial thing on every single article to help out Zelda Universe. So there was the people at the websites who were friendly and trying to support the other websites. But then there was the people that's just like, no, that person stole this and blah, blah, blah. And it's,
Yeah. And also, there's a lot of people that they get, and I actually had a similar issue on the video side of things on YouTube, where basically people are like, you stole this person's idea for an article or for this video, and it's like literally.
Talking, but I will be back in like 2 seconds.
All right, but literally what that situation was is that this is a news outlet, right? And we're just both reporting the same news. So, and that's not plagiarizing. It's just that we're both talking about the same topic, especially when it's news or something like that's. I feel like not in any way plagiarism. I don't know how to better explain it, but yeah, I mean, it happened to me. Someone accused me of plagiarizing their own video, and I was like, dude, no, like this video. First of all, I've been working on this for a week, right? So there's no way I could have plagiarized your video you uploaded 8 hours ago. And second of all, it's just like we're just reporting the same news. That's all it is. Like
there was something very similar. HMK, which we're all part of the Chamber of Sages, as a lot of people know, but HMK, Zeltic, and I, on the same exact day, all posted the exact same theory video that talked about all of the exact same stuff. It was on.
What are the odds?
Yeah, it was on I think it was like the Shrines and the Guardians, and it was a big theory. And there was a lot of people on my videos. I was like, oh, you stole this from Zeltic. And then someone would comment and be like, no, he didn't steal it from Zeltic. Both of them stole it from HMK. But then there'd be comments on HMK's video saying the same stuff. Comments on Zeltic's video.
And it's the thing is, with videos is that they take time. Like, we can't just whip these things up in an hour. Like, you know, like there's the video that just went up today. The new Zelda game video.
Yeah, for 2018 and beyond.
Yeah, so I don't know how much time you spent writing that,
Okay,
but
so
like probably a good while. And
I
then
I
I
had the idea of that video for
mhm,
about a week. I think I took a day or two to write the script and record the
mhm.
audio, edit the audio. I sent it to you,
Yeah, and then
and
I took probably it took me a few days because of timing issues, but it took me probably a good 8 or 10 hours to edit.
yeah,
And so it's like we can't just whip these up in a day, guys. Like it's not how it works. So when
yeah,
multiple people post the same thing on the same day, like don't you can't just assume the worst intention. Like especially I know Zeltic and HMK and like their their videos take quite a lot of effort to, but they put a lot of work into them, editing them especially. There's
mhm,
no way that it's like all in a day's work, everyone. You know.
yeah.
So
If I ever do write a video, record the audio, edit the video all in a single day, then it's one of those times where like I don't get up unless it's to like go use the bathroom or get food or
yeah,
drink or something, and then I'll be there from like 6 p.m. until 10 a.m. the next day because
yeah.
it
So that's all in a
takes
day's work, but that's all of your whole entire days. Like
yeah.
that's all you did all
And then
day.
then when
Yeah.
you're done with the video, you have to edit the
Hmm.
thumbnail. You have to edit the description, the title. Make sure you have a thumbnail that's not too clickbaity but gets people's attention, and like debate on okay, there's 10 different titles this video could have.
Yeah.
Like the one that we posted earlier could be what's in store for Zelda in the following years, or new Zelda games to come in the next 3 years, or Nintendo
Hmm.
working like all Zelda games Nintendo's working on. Like there's a
Yeah.
billion different titles it could have. So like it was a debate for me, which sometimes I'll just ask you or people in Discord like, hey, here's this video. What's a good title that you
Yeah.
guys like? Which would you click on first? So
Hmm. And also we've compared thumbnails, like which of these thumbnails is better, and yeah. So yeah,
yeah. So
just trust us, guys. We're trying our best.
so in the same way that we get similar comments like, oh, you stole this from Zeltic, and it's like there was a few videos where like because Zeltic or HMK or McIntyre, Commonwealth Realm, Vortexy Gaming, there's like too many of them to name off, but just because like one or two of them would be in a video and they'd be like, oh, you stole this part from this person, you stole this part from this person, and I was like, no, we're friends. We're all a part of the thing. Like they helped me write this video. They recorded the audio, sent it to me. Like no one stole anything.
Yeah.
Even like RMFH. There was a video with RMFH and YuriofWind, and people commented on it. It's like,
Oh, where
oh,
they guessed it?
no, like people would comment on it, be like, oh, you stole this from YuriofWind, or you blah blah blah, and then like the person who commented that on the video one time called me out on Twitter and was like, oh, you stole this from YuriofWind, and then like I just tagged Andrew, which is YuriofWind, and was like, would you like to explain? And then the whole situation kind of dived down because they changed their story from you stole this to you didn't give any credit to, and I'm like, well, in every single video
Yes.
I have, if you look in the top right hand corner, you will
Yeah,
see
there's always someone's Twitter handle, or yeah.
Yeah,
And also that again, going back to this because it's the most recent example, the new video that went up, like there's footage from someone's Unreal Engine video, and it just
Kryzen.
says it just says in the corner like source Kryzen.
Yeah, Kryzen, who I've spoke to Kryzen or Kryzinx, however you want to pronounce his name. I've
Kryzen
spoke
X,
to
I
him
don't know.
before, and he's okay
Yeah.
with people using his footage because not only does
Mm-hmm.
he allow, like, there's thousands of videos he could do a copyright claim on, but
Yeah.
he also gives out the code, the source, everything that you need to play all of the stuff that he shows off.
Yeah. I mean, really, if anything, it's also just promoting his own project. So, like using his, yeah.
So, going back to the topic, didn't mean to interrupt you, but in the same way that people
Wow.
comment,
Yeah, we got way out of.
in the same way people comment on our stuff, and it's like, you stole this from this person, I'm assuming
Yeah.
it's the same scenario when people go to Zelda Dungeon and they're like, oh, they stole this article from Zelda Informer, and it's like, no, Nintendo just put out this statement on Twitter, so then everybody types the same
Yeah.
thing. And when you're
We're
doing
just reporting the same news.
when you're doing an article on the same thing, and you're sourcing the same website, whether it's Game Informer, Go Nintendo, or whoever, or Nintendo directly, there's always going to be some similarities, especially if it's like Nintendo saying this game's going to be released on February 25th, and then someone types up an article like, oh, The Legend of Zelda The Minish Cap 2 comes out February 25th. Then they'll be like, oh, well, this same paragraph is similar to this one. They must have just copied it and then changed it around or something. So I imagine it's like similar situations. But
yeah. I mean, this is not a new thing to it. You see that in like real newspapers too. There's,
real newspapers.
And yeah, no,
sorry,
it's
sorry,
there's
Nazis.
times where my not to say that this I mean like physical newspapers, like not to say that these sites aren't real news sites, but I mean like I used to work in a coffee shop, and we would get the newspapers on our newspaper stand, and two popular newspapers in Vancouver here where there's the Metro and the 24. Those are probably the two really popular free newspapers. And there's been like numerous times where they'll literally have the same front page story, and it's just that they're reporting the same news. Like there's no way they're copying each other, because first of all they have to print these things like the night before, so they can't even and they're printed at the same time. You don't get to see what the other paper's printing.
Yeah.
But it happens all the time. It's just that's the news right now, and that's what they're reporting on. It's just coincidence if anything, but.
Right. All right, so I think to wrap this up, Zelda Informer, a year or 2 years ago, apparently Zelda Dungeon was making so much money for Mossies that he thought it was a good investment to purchase his competition. So he bought Zelda Informer. The people who was running Zelda Informer aren't necessarily running. There are still people at Zelda Informer that used to be there. But people like Nate moved on to Nintendo Prime.
I think Darren's writing for a music news website now, actually. So, like, pretty big departure.
And there's which is really cool because I've had a few of my favorite bands on here to interview. So,
oh, nice.
One of them, Escape the Fate, let slip their new album they were working on before anyone noticed. So I was like,
oops.
I could just like not edit this part out, and then people will be like sourcing my video. But because we established a friendship at that time, I didn't do anything. So,
you don't want to, betray their trust, and
Which I still need to work on that vlog where we all like went out to the gym and everything. And concert.
Yeah, that sounds like fun, man.
Yeah. Anyways, that was where Kayla, my ex, whatever you want to call her, broke her knee during the concert, so that sucked.
Yeah.
But then, hanging out
rough.
with the drummer, he he didn't seem to mind. He could have been like, oh, well, because we had plans to hang out later after the concert. So after he got off stage and everything, we were still hanging out. But where her knee was broke, she had to limp everywhere whenever we would walk from like one place to another. So he could have been like, no, I think I'll just stay on the tour bus. You guys, you're hurt, just go home or whatever. But instead he was like, I don't mind if we have to walk like a quarter of a mile per hour. Then we'll do it. So it was really nice. Like, he still wanted to hang out and everything. He bought us our breakfast earlier that day. Everything, it was awesome. So that video will be coming soon. But a lot of the people at Zelda Informer, like we were talking about, moved on to Nintendo Prime. We're good friends with those people. Darren apparently moved on to a music website, which is really awesome. That's a huge difference from Zelda.
Yeah.
So there are the people that's left that we're still friends with. We're still pals with Mossies and everybody. I think everyone. Nate. And...
Actually, I don't think Mossies knows who I am.
Okay.
When I worked there, I think I talked to him 2 times.
Okay.
And one of them was like asking, like, "Hey, am I allowed to work at both Nintendo Prime and Zelda Informer?" And and he was like, "Yeah, but you can't do anything Zelda at Nintendo Prime." And I was like, "Okay, well." Damn it, I'd already sent Nate a video about Zelda, so...
See, that's That's
Yeah.
I mean, it's understandable. There's a lot of websites and stuff, like even at IGN,
Yeah.
which is the biggest gaming website. Even if you go there, when you like leave to go do something else, or if you're working there and you try doing something similar, it's like, well, if you're making Zelda videos or whatever, why can't you? With IGN specifically, what I'm referring to is when Greg and everybody left to start Kind of Funny, it was like, well, if you're working here writing about video games and then you're making videos talking about video games, why couldn't you just do that for us, and then we pay you the money that you would make doing it on your own? And
yeah, that
so
makes sense.
like,
It's like pretty standard business practice, right? It's like moonlighting.
Yeah, no compete,
almost. So
like a no compete clause or something. Which
yeah.
Even like sports has that, where like if you play for one team, unless it's like in the contract, if you leave, you can't go somewhere else for like 3 months or whatever it usually is. So I think everybody is still friends with everyone. There's like no hard feelings really between anyone. Nintendo
I don't
Prime
think so.
is doing really well. They just passed 30,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Wow.
Zelda Dungeon has, I think, over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. They, on their Facebook, Twitter accounts, they have like a couple 100,000 followers. I don't really know. I think I want to say Zelda Universe on either their Facebook or Twitter has like 500,000.
Yeah, they do pretty well.
Yeah. So that's really cool, because at one point I helped out on their social media. So like whenever I would log in to post about an article, I'm like, 500,000 people could potentially see this.
That's that would make me very nervous.
Yeah. Well, that's how I feel now. Like whenever I post a video, it's like 50,000 people are actually interested in what I have to say.
Yeah.
Almost 50,000. We'll be there in a week or two. Anyways, I think that wraps up this. Is there any final things you would like to say about Zelda Informer, Zelda Dungeon? I really liked this discussion, because it's not just news like, oh, here's this info. Like, I'm actually passionate about this because for the longest time, like, I had a lot of respect and looked up to Mossies. I remember whenever I first talked to him, he was a teacher at a school, and I was like,
oh.
Yeah, like I think he left his teaching job.
1 sec.
All right. So we're going to
wait for 2 seconds, but keep going.
All right. So whenever he was doing that, like I would talk to him and joke around and be like, I guess when a student doesn't feel like doing their homework, they can just be like, hey, Mossies, what's your favorite dungeon in the Zelda series? And then where he's so passionate, they'd end up talking about Zelda, or at least that's how it would be for me. I'm sure I asked it as kind of a joke, but I assume like a dozen people had asked him before that, so it was probably like one of those things like, oh, I've been asked that 1,000,000 times. So yeah, but hey,
I'm back. Sorry about that.
So
my son's just watching Pokemon.
Yeah.
And he was just having some trouble getting set up with it. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So did you hear what I was saying though?
Nope.
It was about like him being, whenever I first started writing for Zelda Dungeon, he was a teacher. Whenever I found out, I would I joked around whenever I first talked to him. It was like, oh, I bet whenever a student doesn't feel like doing their work, they can be like, hey, Mr. Mossy, like, what's your favorite Zelda dungeon? Or what Zelda game do you think should have a sequel more than the others? And then they would get caught up talking about Zelda as opposed to doing their actual work. But
that would totally work on me if I was a teacher. That would work on me every time.
He didn't really say anything about it. Like, he just like carried on the conversation, like he didn't really pay attention to it. But I assume that's because so many people had asked him before, and it's just one of those things that's like, I've answered that 1,000,000 times. Your joke's kind of old, but he didn't want to be rude about it. So, but anyways, yeah, Mossy's great person. I can't really think of anyone better to take over both of the websites, unless it was someone like Nate or even Darren, who left.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Well, he's doing a really good job with Zelda Dungeon. Like I don't think he's having. Like, I have faith in his ability to run the sites.
Yeah.
So
Apparently, he did so well with a Zelda website that he made enough money to where he could quit his actual job. So,
wow, good for him. Honestly,
maybe,
good for him.
Did he quit? I don't know if he actually quit or not. I know people told me he did, but I never asked him directly. So
that's what I've heard as well, though. I've heard that he has quit.
Yeah.
His day job and just.
Sorry, what were you saying? Oh, you were just saying that you've heard that he has?
Yeah, that's what I've heard as well, but
yeah. And then
I might be wrong.
We didn't really mention the people at Zelda Universe, but the people running that website, really great as well. I think Jason is the official owner. He also runs a website called SquareNot, which is like Wikipedia for how to do this, how to do that. Like how to, I don't like the example that he uses is like there's dozens of different knots that you can tie, so he called it square knot because it's like, how do you tie this type of knot? So it was something simple a lot of people would be able to catch on to, and then it kind of stands out as a website name. So square knot, it's simple. So but aside from him, he owns it. The webmaster that I became friends with. It was pretty cool. The news video host, Amanda, everybody. So it was also on the Australian version of Beauty and the Geek, which when I first seen, because I was a big fan of Beauty and the Geek, I was like, what? What is he doing on there?
He was the beauty, right?
Oh. No, he was there for the geek.
Why? Are you saying he's not beautiful?
He's very, very beautiful. But that's yeah, that's Cody.
That's a topic on its own.
Cody, the webmaster. It's really funny because in the it has him doing geeky things, and then it has him doing like really beauty preppy things in the trailer, like the intro for it. So when every episode you'd see them all like in a big room smiling, jumping around in this like giant mansion while there's like colorful bubbles everywhere, and they're just like popping the bubbles. It's like, I don't know.
Popping bubbles is a wicked fun time though.
There was a lot of moments in it where I just laughed out loud because of it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I actually know that person. So it's really great. I don't know if it's still on. It was on in the US back in like the early 2000s. And then he was on season 3 for the Australian thing, which I think it aired like 15 years after the American version. And then I think there's one for the UK as well. But I really like the Australian version because of the accents that they have. So it's like everyone sounds like not necessarily a geek, but they sound smart because of the accent. It's like when you see like a British professor and it's like, oh, he must be smart. Anyways,
it's gotta be.
very, very off topic. I apologize, guys. But any final words before we move on?
Rest in peace, Zelda Informer. I love you. I miss you. That's all I got.
Mossies, if you watch this, please do something with Zelda. And it would be cool if, like, when you typed in an article, I don't know if it would be possible to do this, but like if you typed in something, like something gets announced and then you type it in, if they could have that thing like I was talking about to where both websites show up for it, instead of having two completely different articles, if it would be Zelda Informer and then whatever the article was, like
so the same article?
Yeah, like Minish Cap 2. Not the same article, but in search engines and stuff.
Right.
It would just show both websites with the article. That way it still doubles your chances. Like it would say Zelda Informer. Nintendo reveals release date for Minish Cap 6. And then it would be Zelda Dungeon. Nintendo reveals release date for Minish Cap 6.
Yeah. But, I mean,
And then either
Moving
one that
forward,
you
it'll-
click on, it takes you to the Zelda dungeon thing. Like you were saying, if you click on the
Yeah.
Zelda Informer articles, it takes you to Zelda dungeon anyways.
It'll redirect. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean they'll be fine. They're gonna still do the same good work.
I wanted to say really quick, didn't mean to interrupt you, but my final
go
thought
ahead.
is I hope a lot of the people that spent years working on these websites, like I know Nate moved on, Darren has moved on, but people who may have worked and written for the website for like 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or even since the beginning, if there are anybody left at Zelda Informer that's been there that long, I hope they don't get sad about it, because they could look at it as like, I helped build that website. Like, because of me and the team that I worked with, that website got as popular as it is, and now it's just no more.
Yeah.
So
Although, I know that Nate's not a part of the website anymore, but he did post something about that, just saying like it's sort of a recap of his time there, and it was a bit emotional, but very respectable article that he posted.
all right.
Just sort of a goodbye. You should read that. But
Yeah. I wonder how long
I wonder
be.
if talking about
What?
Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, I wonder
what?
how long it's. I was saying, I wonder how long it's going to be before the thought of like purchasing another website comes in his mind. Because it would be really cool. I know he has Darksiders Dungeon. I think he had some sort of stake in the website gingame.net, which was like a general gaming news website. I didn't really know what a Gen Game stood for, if it was like a generation of games, like how the PlayStation 4 is a new generation, PlayStation 3, or if it meant general gaming, Gen Game.
Yeah.
Instead of Zelda Dungeon, all about Zelda, Gen Game is all about like just games in general. But there was also Pokemon Dungeon, which is how I came to know Cody from Zelda Universe, because he couldn't work for a Zelda website, but he was buddies with Mossies. Just recently during Zelda Universe's marathon they had, where they played through all of the Zelda games just recently, like a couple of months ago, Mossies actually joined on there. So that's another thing where it's like there's a friendly relationship between all of them.
Yeah.
But
that's good. I'd like that, honestly, because
when Cody whenever Mossies had Pokemon Dungeon, Cody, I believe, was in charge of writing for that. And then when Darksiders 2 first came out, Mossies also started a Darksiders Dungeon, because it was basically the same as Zelda, like just copying the Zelda formula with its own story and its own characters. So he had that. He may have some other websites that I don't really know about, but there are all of those. But it would be nice to see him, if he did try purchasing another website, it would be cool to see him get a website that was about just different video games instead of just Zelda, to have that variety. But that may be too much for him, since he already has like pieces of all these other websites. But anyways, that's all I have to say about this.
I wonder if talking about these about Zelda Dungeon and Zelda Informer so much, I wonder if they're gonna write an article about this video.
Inception.
They should. Andy, if you're watching.
Yeah. No, when I first started my YouTube channel, I reached out because I wanted to interview all of the like the kings of the different Zelda websites. So like Cody or Jason from Universe, Nate from Informer, and then Mossies from Dungeon. And everybody agreed, but it was just like our schedules never lined up, where I would go a week or two without getting back in touch with someone, and then the only one that I really got was Nate, which I think he actually interviewed me as well, so it went both ways. And then of course someone from Zelda Informer, I think someone from Zelda Informer, after Mossies bought it, reached out to me to interview me about my YouTube channel. Zelda Universe was odd, because while I was writing for them, they would also post about my videos. But then Zelda Informer and Zelda Dungeon would also post about my videos, and it would be like this thing that's like, Jesse from Game Over Jesse, but also from Zelda Universe writes this thing. And then, like, whenever Zelda Universe would write an article, I would always make sure that I wasn't the one to write it, because I looked at it as like, oh, that's just self-promotion. But if the people in charge of Zelda Universe are like, oh, this video or this theory is actually interesting, let's get someone to write about it. So I would never really ask them to, but it was nice when it would happen, because then it's like, oh, they actually liked it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. So that was really cool. But I'm getting off topic again. I'm sorry, guys.
It's all good. I mean, I think we've talked about these websites for a while. We can probably move on to the other news.
Like I said, I love all of these websites so much that I could go on forever. But anyways, moving on to our second. So our second piece of news. Ubisoft, once upon a time, created a Game Boy... Actually, I'm going to start this over.
Sure.
So, once upon a time, Ubisoft, the creators were some of the people that worked on the recent Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, pitched a Game Boy Advance remake or demake of the GameCube title, Wind Waker. They had a playable demo. There was a picture that was actually released, which I'll post in the video to show everybody. Do you have the picture up on yours?
I do, yeah. It's very reminiscent of Minish Cap.
Yes.
In its art style, but I mean that's to be expected, kind of based on that Minish Cap and Wind Waker share a similar art style. So
yeah, and I'm not actually sure if this is like a proof of concept image that they just made as like just pixel art or something, as like this is what it could look like. But they did say they had a working demo. I don't know if it's a screenshot from.
It says in the article, I'm looking on IGN here.
Yeah.
That the pixel art was made, the one that's shown here was made by the people that worked at Ubisoft. So I think this is like their official mock-up, basically.
Yeah.
Might be. I'm not sure if it's a screenshot of the demo or a proof of concept, though. Yeah. It could be either one.
Think about this while I read the article, but if you can like kind of picture what dungeon this could potentially be.
Or Dragon Roost Cavern.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right away. I don't know, just that's what it looks like to me.
All right, so the actual article we're reading from IGN, but the news did break from one of the developers themselves who posted about it. There's also some funny comments on the Twitter post about people being like, yes, you made this, pitched it to Nintendo, they shut you down, and then pitched or like worked with Capcom. Because, as you said, it looks very similar to, like, instead of coming up with, oh, hey, here's Wind Waker on Game Boy, or, Game Boy Advance, they're like, let's just do an original game for the Game Boy Advance. But, so the original article says, Mario and Rabbids director once pitched a Game Boy Advanced version of Zelda with the Wind Waker. This is interesting because before, and we talked about this in one of our top 5 canceled Mario games videos, the second one, sequel, as you will, they mentioned that before Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle, a few years prior, they had pitched, assuming for the Wii U, a Mario and Rabbids crossover that would have been more of an adventure game, I guess, whereas this one was a strategy game. But the actual article says, Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle creative director David Soliani, hope I pronounced that right, wanted to make a Game Boy Advanced version of The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker. Soliania. How would you pronounce this, Daniel?
The name Soliani? I don't know. Soliani?
Yeah, that
sounds Italian.
Soliani revealed on Twitter. Well, Ubisoft, there's like an Italian, somewhere in the UK, there's the American, like they have developer team everywhere, even in France, I believe. Anyways, Soliani revealed on Twitter he and Ubisoft artist Fabio Pagetti, another name,
Fabio Spaghetti,
pitched making please don't hate us. Anyone
Please
from
don't.
Ubisoft,
I'm sorry.
if you see this, don't hate us. Pitched making a demo for Game Boy Advance version of the Wind Waker back in 2003. So when did the DS came out in like 2005, 2006?
I think so. Yeah.
All right.
What year did Minish Cap come out though?
I don't know. Google
I'm just
that.
gonna Google that.
Yeah. Soliani even had
because the first time I played Minish Cap was 2015, so I'm not a good 2004. So Minish Cap came out a year later. So I wonder if this was sort of denied because Minish Cap was already in the works. You know?
Because they wouldn't have been able to steal the idea and then do it, because it would have taken longer to create Minish Cap.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, I prefer that they had an original game come out for Game Boy Advance instead of just a downgrade of Wind Waker, basically, because when you have...
you know what else?
What else?
They not only did they have Minish Cap, which would have looked very similar to the Wind Waker, but, or at least similar to the way that the pitch looks, they would have also been working on a Wind Waker sequel.
Oh, so Phantom Hourglass.
For the next console. So they could have seen it as, okay, we have Minish Cap coming out now. We're secretly preparing a Wind Waker sequel for the DS. And also at the time, 2003, they were likely... Because as we mentioned in the video that posted today, Sunday the 24th, for the people watching this later, there was the quote from the interview where I mentioned that Twilight Princess was originally supposed to be Wind Waker 2, but was changed to feature a more realistic art style, and then it transformed into Twilight Princess as opposed to just a sequel to the Wind Waker. So
yeah. Though there's still some Wind Waker 2 assets like in the game. Yeah. So apparently you can swap out like the bomb models, and the Wind Waker itself is in the game. And I find that funny to imagine Twilight Princess Link holding a bomb that's like in the Wind Waker art style. I don't know. Yeah. Would it be enormous?
So my thoughts on this: Minish Cap was being made by Capcom. Almost said Comcast. Yeah.
Capcom.
Minish Cap was being worked on by Capcom, and then we had Wind Waker 2, which was being turned into Twilight Princess, while I'm guessing pre-production around that same time, because they likely had all of their ideas for a Wind Waker sequel that they had written out this entire story. They probably took that and made it into a sequel for the DS. So we still
Phantom Hourglass.
We still got we still got the Wind Waker sequel, but instead of like Wind Waker 2, we got Phantom Hourglass for the Game Boy, or not the Game Boy, the DS. So since so much focus was being put on the Wind Waker, and then there was the other game that looked like the Wind Waker, Nintendo was like, well, there's too much Wind Waker. We like, we're gonna kill this Wind Waker concept because like, you know, like people look at it as like with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, there's a lot of people that want a third game, but there's a lot of people that's like, no, the mystery of Majora's Mask is what makes it so great, which is true. But at the same time, you still want all of those questions, mysteries answered, so a sequel would be great. But
but then what would we write theory videos about, guys? Come on. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that they went in a different, like, that this didn't go through, because like when you have different, like a handheld and a console version of a game, they're really not the same game anymore, because there's limitations to both sort of hardware. And so that this from the screenshot is basically a 2D Zelda game. And you wouldn't be able to really translate a 3D Zelda game like Wind Waker into a 2D game really well. Right. Like at that point, you would just be better off making a new game, which is what Capcom's already doing.
One of the most horrible parts of this would have been the sailing, because on Wind Waker you can turn the camera, look around you and everything.
Oh my goodness,
it's a 2D game with a fixed perspective, so you would just be staring blankly at the water the entire time.
Oh no! They would
Unless
have to make it
they
like just
shrunk the size of the ocean and had the islands like much closer.
yeah. Or if they did it in a way like Spirit Tracks or Phantom Hourglass, where basically like the traveling is sort of sort of separate from like the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you would like in a Spirit Tracks, when you're on the train, it's like a new different area that's loaded. That's basically like a little travel, almost like a mini game between destinations, and then you get to your destination, and then that small area is loaded, right?
Yeah.
So if they have these as like two separate sort of areas loaded, but like it's still 2D then, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I would feel like maybe you just have to choose on the map, like sail to destination, and just like it just does a little cutscene or something. Like that's the only way to make it good, I think.
I could have seen them if they would have pitched an Ocarina of Time on the Game Boy Advance. I could see.
I still don't want that.
No, but I'm saying I could have seen it possibly being picked up by Nintendo as opposed to
possibly,
because then you're taking a Nintendo 64 game, putting it on the Game Boy Advance, as opposed to taking a GameCube game and putting it like there's, you know, the Nintendo 64 is still a lot more powerful than the Game Boy Advance, but
yeah, the
GameCube is even like leagues above that. So
yeah,
like the Nintendo 64, one of the big things was in Ocarina of Time, Miyamoto just wanted Link to be able to swing his sword on Epona, but he couldn't. Like something that simple, Nintendo 64, as powerful as it was for the time, couldn't let you do something as simple as that. So the Game Boy Advance, especially with the Wind Waker, there would have been a lot of stuff that's like
it would have been really stripped down, I think.
Yeah.
You know, and that would the thing about Wind Waker is that the world is huge and there's this great air of adventure and there's so much to do. I know people rag on the sailing being boring, but I actually really enjoy that because I feel like it sort of paces the game better because you're breaking up the action, and I enjoy the sailing and then fighting random monsters in the ocean and then going for treasure and stuff. Like there's actually a lot to do.
Yeah.
On the Game Boy Advance, it would be so stripped down that I don't think it would work. They would have to make just a new game, which is what Capcom was already doing with Minish Cap. And man, am I glad they didn't do sailing in Minish Cap.
Yeah.
Like just having a connected overworld it just leagues better.
And it's important to note that there's a quote from the people that worked on it saying that because all we have right now is just the one single screenshot or the pixel art, whatever it is, we don't really know if it's custom pixel art or actual screenshot, but the director says no luck at the time, but it was running nicely. We were dreamers, which means it was running nicely. They did have it running, and apparently running well enough that Ubisoft let them go out and pitch it to Nintendo, to whereas if they just had a screenshot or artwork or something, Ubisoft probably wouldn't have let them without something to actually show.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, if you read the IGN comments, people saying like, well, what, did they have a demo or not? Like, the article is admittedly phrased kind of vaguely, so it's hard to tell, but I don't think they would go without something to show more than just that screenshot. Like they would need a demo to show.
I imagine
Nintendo is like very hands-on with their approach to pitches. I know I was reading, it's a little off topic, but when Captain Toad was released, which by the way is very underrated, I actually really enjoyed that game. But like Miyamoto, apparently when it was pitched to him, he didn't get it. Like he didn't understand the concept of the game until he had a hands-on demo to play with.
Yeah.
In fact, he didn't even understand that it was supposed to be a game. He thought it was like a diorama, like an actual physical thing you could buy, like a toy. So I don't know. Like maybe there was just some really big issues with that pitch. Yeah, but
that would actually be really
like
cool.
That would be
like a 3D board game version of Treasure Tracker. Not Treasure Tracker. Toad. Yeah.
No, that's right. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker.
Wait, wasn't the GameCube? It was Tetra Treasure Tracker.
Tetra Trackers. I don't know.
Yeah.
Navi trackers.
You know what I'm talking about, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's something else though. But yeah, it's. I feel like they would need a demo. Basically, is what I mean. Like
Yeah.
I don't think they'd go with like one screenshot and be like, can we take one of your most beloved franchises and one of your IPs that you're super
like,
protective over and make a game?
They'd be like, oh well, it worked out for Philips.
Like they're like, okay, well, what do you have to show us? Well, we've got this one screenshot. What do you think?
Yeah. No, so if they did have this demo, what do you think the demo would have been? Because for this,
probably
I don't
probably
think
a portion of a dungeon.
Yeah, I don't think they would have had a full dungeon. So like you said, it looked like Dragon Roost. It was probably like a third or a half of that dungeon.
Yeah.
And then I would.
But how would the grappling hook work? Oh my god! See, there's so many things. I'm like, how would this in a 2D game?
Yeah.
you know.
Then maybe the opening segment of the game. Maybe they would have that because that would be a lot simpler than a dungeon, I would imagine.
Yeah, actually, like, we've talked about the GameCube Collector's Zelda pack. It had in the Wind Waker demo. I remember these distinctly because I played them to death when I was a kid before I got Wind Waker.
Yeah.
There was 3 sections though. There was like the beginning of Forsaken Fortress, the first time you go in when you're just sneaking.
There's Dragon
Then there's
Roost
like
Island.
Dragon Roost Island, and then there's the first portion of Dragon Roost Cavern.
Yeah.
So those would be good areas to have as a demo in your pitch. Just like very simple sort of areas that you can have a working thing of. But to see once you get far into the dungeon and get the grappling hook, the whole 2D concept falls apart.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how they would work that in a 2D game.
They
would have to take 2.5D it
liberties in changing some of the layout.
Yeah, but then at that point, it's not the same game. Like if you have to start changing things or stripping it down, like it's just you lose the magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, any final things on this before we move on?
It looks cool, but I'm glad it didn't work out because we got Minish Cap instead. I don't want a Game Boy Advance game.
But here's the thing. Here's where the debate comes in. Nintendo had Capcom working on Minish Cap.
Yeah. So I'm glad we got that. I like Minish Cap.
They weren't necessarily working on their own Game Boy Advanced game. I imagine they were too busy with Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, and then Phantom Hourglass came out on the DS. So I imagine they would have been at work on their own stuff. Like, I don't think this would have delayed any of the other games or taken away from them. I think it would have just been, oh, here's this extra game that we could have had without it taking away from other stuff. Like the other day on Facebook, you mentioned that you wouldn't really want the Zelda mobile game on smartphones or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
am I being too negative, guys?
No,
because I'm just like, I don't want a smartphone Zelda game. I don't want it because I want my big console experience.
But the way everybody looks at it is, which you're not everybody, but like casual Zelda fans look at it as like, oh well, I would rather have Breath of the Wild 2 instead of this mobile iPhone game or Android game. But in reality, it's Nintendo has almost nothing to do with the handheld games except DNA is the company right now working on the handheld team. So they have their directors, their producers, their development staff, their marketing and everything. I'm assuming all they have to do is like once a week they call up Aonuma or Miyamoto, whoever, and say, hey, here's what we've got so far. This is what we're doing. And within like a 30-minute phone call, it's like its own thing. So we get that alongside this other stuff as opposed to, well, here's this 2D thing that we have, but because of this, Breath of the Wild 2 is being delayed by 6 months. I don't think it's something like that. I think it's like this team's busy on that while this other team is busy on this. So you're getting something extra as opposed to instead of.
Yeah, I guess there's nothing wrong with releasing it, but for me, like, I just don't feel like I would enjoy it because the other mobile games that Nintendo's put out. I haven't tried Animal Crossing yet because Animal Crossing is too addictive for me to even venture into. But Fire Emblem that went on the okay.
I have it downloaded on my iPad. I mentioned earlier I just bought an iPad. My phone is an iPhone 6, I think, like the small 6. So I don't think the screen is big enough to enjoy playing a game. But with the iPad, I re-downloaded Mario Jump and some of the other games, and it's 10 times better on the iPad than it is the phone.
Okay. So I've just found that with Fire Emblem and Mario Run specifically, both times that I started playing them, it's just made me want to put it down and play an actual game from that series. Like, I had just finished playing Fire Emblem Awakening for the first time, and then a week later, Fire Emblem Heroes came out on mobile. And so I got it, and it just felt so stripped down compared to the game that I had just played, and so like basic that it was just I couldn't enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
So then I stopped playing it after like 2 days, and it was sort of the same thing with Mario Run, where it just felt so stripped down and basic, and so that's kind of how I feel like this 2D Wind Waker would be, and how I feel like I worry, like I don't want there to. I kind of am worried that I'm scared I'm gonna have a Zelda game release from Nintendo, and I'm not gonna like it.
Yeah.
And I don't want that, because they've had a great record so far. Not a single Zelda game I've not liked. I even like Zelda 2, guys. So.
Yeah. Do you have the live stream up?
I'll just pull it up here. I've been just like checking back and forth periodically, but it takes a toll on my internet.
I mentioned earlier we wouldn't interact with the chat until we got to the Q&A, but RPG in the chat says he agrees with you.
Oh, okay, great.
He says, I think so, ... No Game Boy Advance games, no smartphone games. So yeah, big console we'll get every 5 to 6 years. They do have the structure of Breath of the Wild, so maybe 2 to 3 years. I'm assuming he means 2 to 3 years for the next big Zelda game. And then he continues... That's the point of the mobile games. I'm pretty sure is to give a little taste of experience that you will have on the console, since it's such a big market. Why not? And here's Nintendo.
That's fair.
When Nintendo first came out with their handheld games like Mario Run, I thought Mario Run. It should be Mario Run. It's Mario Jump. Sonic has... No, is it Mario?
It's Mario Run.
Yeah, it's Mario Run, and then Sonic Jump is the thing. And then there was the meme that's like Sonic should be Sonic Run, and then Mario.
Hey, wait a minute, you're right. Because all you do in Mario Run, the only action you can perform is the jump.
Yeah. So
what are they thinking?
And then in the Sonic Jump, you're you're running the whole time and like going from left, middle to right, I believe. And then you
my goodness.
I think you can have the screen to jump over like logs and obstacles and stuff. But what I was going to say is whenever they first came out, they kind of mentioned this, but whenever they mentioned it in their interviews, it was kind of vague. So how I thought they were going to do with Mario Run, right? Mario Run? Okay.
Yes, Mario Run.
Getting these two. And the bad thing is, even if you just type in Mario on iTunes Store, because I was doing this yesterday, Sonic Jump is right beside of it. And it's like, that doesn't even have Mario in the title.
Yeah.
Anyways, I thought if you would download Mario Run, okay, so you download Mario Run, you, like if you purchase the game or whatever, and then you play a few levels, it would be like, hey, you enjoyed Mario Run enough to purchase the game. That $7-8, whatever you spend on the game, they would be like, here's like a coupon or a code or something, like here's something 10% off or 5% off of the Nintendo Switch. Like if you liked this handheld game, maybe you would like the full experience. Here's 10% to help you out or whatever, or like here's a 10% code to give you Yeah, like as a thank you, here's this. And then they could have done the same
That'd be
thing
cool.
with Animal Crossing, like whenever the game actually comes out. Obviously, I wouldn't do it when the game first comes out because they probably want all of those new sales, but like 2-3 weeks after the game comes out, everyone who's still playing that Animal Crossing game, they could be like, here's 10% for this. Or on Fire Emblem, they could have done it with Fire Emblem Warriors. So there's,
or even on 3DS, one of the 3DS games,
since it's actual Fire Emblem game instead of the Team Ninja, or is it Ninja Theory? Team Ninja?
Team Ninja.
Yeah.
So,
I thought that would have been really good because it's like someone, I don't know how, but someone may not even realize, hey, there's Mario on the Switch, because I think even people who don't play the Switch should know about that, especially if you download the mobile game. But even if it's a kid that's like playing the game and then it pops up, it's like, here's 10% off of this, then that would be enough for them to go to their parents and be like, oh, I want this game, it's like this, but it's the actual game on the Switch. And then the parents would be like, well, we don't want to pay that much for you to get the game. And then they're like, no, it has, for downloading the app on the phone, it gives us 10% off. And then they're like, oh, well, if we're getting a discount, then we might as well go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And then where Nintendo is getting the $7-8 from the game on the smartphone, that would make up the cost from the 10% being taken off of the actual game. So in a way, you'd be getting the full Mario game for free, I assume. Like it would work out to where instead of like the $60 price for people in America, you would be paying like $61 instead of $68 or whatever from buying the game and the app. So that's my thoughts. But do you have any thoughts?
No, I just, I don't mean to offend anyone who likes these mobile games. It just doesn't hold my attention.
Yeah.
When I like to game, I like to like sit down on the couch and just like get into it.
Well, guess what?
What?
In this topic of the Game Boy Advanced version of the Wind Waker, we created 2 topics. So now we have a topic for GBA, and we'll have the second topic for Zelda on smartphone. Which, by the way, I like whenever I see a video segment that we do, and on the first day it gets like 1,000 or 2,000 views or something, and then it always dwindles down after that, and then you'll get like 100 the next day, 100 the next day. But when I go back to an older video from like 2 or 3 weeks ago and I see it has 10,000 views, that means constantly every day a few hundred new people would go and watch it. So it's really cool seeing it like build up over time as opposed to just dying out after the first few days, which a lot of videos have done, but then there's also the videos that just keep going. And the video that we posted yesterday seems like it's going to be one of those videos because it's got a lot of comments from people who very much are demanding Nintendo make a Zelda anime. So did you see all the comments from people that was like...
I saw it. Yeah, I was reading the comments today, and I just have to say, like, a lot of people are being really hard on Orion. Like, I don't know, like... Yeah. I was gonna say, guys, like, he's not like he's brainless about Zelda, guys. Come on.
Yeah, he's knowledgeable.
He was in a fan film. Or he was Link.
Yeah, like he actually played Link, which I replied to a couple of the comments and was like, he actually is really knowledgeable, but when it comes to Breath of the Wild specifically, which a lot of the questions were about, like a lot of people, he wasn't able to go out and buy a Nintendo Switch to play Breath of the Wild. Like there's still people, like even in the Discord chat that we have, there's a lot of regular people who are constantly talking that say, oh, I hope I get a Switch for Christmas. So there's even the hardcore fans like him that haven't had the chance. Plus, where he's in the band, he's constantly on the road or whatever. Like, it might...
Well, the Switch is a perfect console for him.
Yeah, but like, what I'm saying is, like, while you're on the road, like, you can't just, like,
You don't always have the time.
Yeah, we have to drive
100
miles to get to this next place to play the concert. We don't have time to stop at whatever their version of Walmart or Target or Game or whatever it is.
So I don't know. Just guys, be nice. Like you know, don't be so hard on him. Like he was a cool guy. He's really nice. Like I wasn't able to make it to the podcast last week, but I have talked to him online, and he's a really nice guy. So I don't know. That just
there was
kind of a downer.
A very positive comment. Someone left for you and Lexi, but was negative towards me. They were like, what was it that they said exactly?
I was like, give us Daniel and Lexi.
Yeah, it's like, who's this? I don't watch the Game Over Jesse YouTube channel to watch Jesse. Give us Lexi and Daniel.
Give us Daniel and Lexi. That actually, you know, that was kind of nice to hear that was gone for 1 week and that you guys wanted me back. Like that was nice. And also Lexi we had on for like half of one episode. So
yeah, the very first time that you're missing, someone demands that you come back. So
I'm flattered. I really am. Thank you, Mini Ben.
Yeah, RPG
20032.
Yeah, RPG in the chat just says, "This Jesse dude, I tell you." So yeah, but I think we can move on to our third news story.
Yes, let's. So this one is the source of this is Nintendo Canada. So for all my Canadian brethren, though it's the return. We all know that Nintendo Power was shut down years ago. They stopped producing the great magazines that were Nintendo Power, but Nintendo Power is back, kind of.
For Daniel.
For me specifically. This hosted by Nintendo of America employees, but it's now returned as a podcast instead of a magazine.
Wait, it's hosted by Nintendo of America?
Or for people who work there. So Chris Slate, who is hosting, he's a former editor-in-chief of Nintendo Power. Okay, so these are people who... Oh! I haven't actually listened to it, but I read a bunch about it. Kit Ellis from Nintendo Minute.
Okay, See, the thing with the original Nintendo Power was it wasn't created... I could be wrong. Tell me in the chat, people watching the video.
Yes.
I think it was just... Like, it wasn't made by Nintendo, the magazine. Like, there was PlayStation Magazine, which I believe was ran by PlayStation. Game Informer, which is partnered with GameStop. They, I think it was last year, GameStop started publishing their own video games. Like, certain indie games they would publish, but then they would also write about them in their magazine. So a lot of people was like, well, if they're selling this game, aren't they automatically going to talk good about it? So with the
That's
original,
a good point. Yeah.
So with the original Nintendo Power, it wasn't ran by Nintendo. It was just approved and officially licensed or whatever by Nintendo. But it was like its own entity outside of Nintendo. It was basically Nintendo being like, oh, here's free publicity. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to pay anybody. All we have to do is send like a $50, $60 game for them to review, and we get automatic.
And maybe do some interviews and yeah.
So with that, they were free to say, oh, this game sucks. Like if Splatoon comes out and the person reviewing it was like, oh, this is a horrible game, or if it comes out and someone says this is an amazing game, you would know that, okay, they're not being biased because they're not being paid by Nintendo. But where this is people being paid by Nintendo, like Kit, everyone's
Kit Ellis I love that guy and his hair.
Everyone's favorite Nintendo YouTube personality.
Yeah.
Like there is that doubt in the back of your mind now that it's like, well, this, like, there's the possibility of them being biased since they are working for Nintendo, because it's like if the next handheld Zelda game comes out and they're like, it's a 6 out of 10, which isn't necessarily saying it's bad. It's just saying, oh, this game's mediocre. It's average. Nintendo might be like, well, we were going to renew your contract next year, but now...
But now I'm not so sure.
Yeah, so there's always that that pressure on fans to be like, are they saying what Nintendo's telling them to say? It's like, I think of it as in WWE, which I'm a fan of, they do the stupidest thing where they'll have like an interview segment to where it looks like when a politician or a basketball player, someone's being interviewed, and you see on the microphone how it has like ESPN, ABC, CNN, or whatever. But whenever WWE does it, there might be like one ESPN microphone there, but like the other 10 microphones are all like WWE. And it's like, why do you have like 8 of your own people? Like they do it to like whenever I guess kids are watching or whatever, because it's really big for kids. It makes them think that it's a big deal, but people like us that see through it, it's like, why are they having 10 people stand out and they just really
interview? Need that recording to go well.
Yeah, it's like we're
like the more mics the better.
Yeah, it's like we're going to test out this person recording with their lavalier. We're going to test out this person recording with their iPhone. This person's recording with their Galaxy smartphone. This person's recording with their shotgun microphone. This person's using an actual microphone you would want to use in an interview.
A shotgun would work pretty well.
No, it does, but I'm like, if you... It works really good for like, if you want it to be out of frame.
Yeah.
But
if you're holding it right up against the guy's face, then it's going to sound pretty crackly, you know?
Yeah, so one of the things, one of the microphones that actually is one of my first microphones that I bought was the Shure SM57 microphone. And the reason I bought it was I was recording music at the time, but I wanted something that was kind of diverse to where like you could record vocals or talking, interviews, as well as recording guitar and stuff like that. And I would watch a lot of my favorite bands, and whenever they would go and record, they would have that microphone up against the speaker to record their guitar. And then you would watch interviews with the president at the time, like Obama or whatever, and he would be using, like, there would be 2 or 3 of that same microphone on the thing. And in my head, I'm like, if it's good enough for the president, it's going to work for me.
Absolutely.
Like, they have the funds to pay like $50,000 for a microphone. If a microphone ever did cost $50,000, they would be able to afford it. Or they would be able to get like 15 of them for free, because the people that make it would be like, oh, the president
wants a microphone? Sure, man.
Yeah. Like,
yes.
Like, again, that goes back to free publicity. So in my head, I was like, Shure SM57, it's good enough for the president. It's good enough for me. So like, I would expect them to be using microphones like that. But then like, there's people that has their phone up to them and everything, and it's like all the same company, and I'm like, what is this? But anyways, getting off topic again, which I believe is the only reason people should watch this podcast, because there's like,
because of how much we get off topic.
On average, the news segments are like 30 minutes long. The news is about 2 minutes long, and then the rest of it is us talking. And I've seen the analytics.
That's the best part.
There are like 90% of people stay for at least most of the video. So
good.
There's not much dropout after we get finished with the news.
I worry how much of that is me reading the comments. Like, because I'll start watching, I'll just be reading the comments, and I was like, oh, I read them all, and then I'll close it and move to the next one. And I don't need to watch it. I lived it, Jesse.
There's no comments from people that's like, oh, you two get off topic, or like make it more about the news. Like, there's no negative comments about that. It's always people like talking about whatever it is we're discussing. So that's really nice.
I mean, if that is a bad thing, you know, just please let us know.
Yeah.
But until then, we're
Shut Up Link in the chat says, I love this podcast. We need more of this on the net.
Oh. Thank you, man.
Yeah. RPG earlier says, I'm Canadian, ... Nintendo Power is back, but only in Canada, ? Yes.
Kinda.
So
I think you could still listen to the podcast anywhere.
Yeah.
Because it's on the internet.
It's just based in Canada.
Or at least Nintendo Canada reported it.
Yeah.
On Twitter. Yeah.
So in the news segment,
I don't think these guys are Canadian that are hosting it. Damon Baker, Chris Slate, Kid Ellis, they're all...
They might as well be. They're living in Washington.
Actually, it's pretty... Washington State City, you mean?
Yeah, like Redmond, Washington.
Oh, yeah, so, yeah, that's very close.
Yeah, that's like...
I'm like 2 hours from Seattle in Vancouver, so, I mean, it's... To give people who don't know Canadian geography very well. Like, that's where... West Coast. that's where I'm at.
If you think of Texas and the border of Mexico, that's where Nintendo's located, but for Canada. It's like literally as close as you can get to Canada without being in Canada. So that's where if you want a job,
it's close enough to check up on us.
If you want a job with Nintendo, you have to buy a few jackets and move to Redmond, Washington.
Buy a few jackets?
Yeah, because it's cold.
Oh, I don't have to buy a few jackets. I'm Canadian, man. It's colder here.
Yeah.
Actually, all the snow melted. It's really sad. Sometimes Vancouver sucks.
It's supposed to snow here tomorrow.
We had a bit of a snowfall, but it just doesn't, since Canada is the least snowy part, or Vancouver's the least snowy part of Canada.
So I just looked.
It's like Seattle. It rains a lot.
Nintendo of America located 4600 150th Avenue, Northeast, Redmond, Washington. So if you guys, if you want to go knock on the door and tell Reggie what's up, that's where you need to go.
What up, Reggie?
Yeah, I've debated on moving there because they were like they post listings for.
Then you can just drive up across the border.
Well, they always post listings for like people that are knowledgeable about Nintendo to be. Like obviously, I couldn't do anything like making a game or translating stuff. I have a friend who I have a few friends that work there, but. Like whenever Mike Drucker, who we're supposed to have on the podcast sometime, wrote some of the stuff for Skyward Sword, Mario Party, Kid Icarus. I actually had him on the channel a long time ago, but I had other friends who, like when the Wii U first came out, they would be I don't know what their job is now, or even if I'm sure like they got put in another place, especially with how successful Nintendo is right now. I don't imagine they would have to fire anyone. They would just move them around. But I was friends with a few people who worked with Miiverse community. They were like Miiverse community managers, but now Miiverse doesn't really exist. So I'm kind of curious, like, what do they do now?
They probably got repurposed to something similar.
Yeah. I thought Miiverse was a good idea.
I liked it, but I get it. But
instead of having that Wara Wara Plaza, was that the name of it on the Wii U? When it first boots up, you see all the people standing there.
Yeah. It's so empty now. It's like when you log on there, it's like a void chasm of what was once Miiverse.
Yeah. Instead of that, if they would have had. Like the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, or the Nintendo Switches. Now, if they had that, and then like Wara Wara Plaza and Miiverse was all just an app, like you click it and then it goes in, I think it may have done a little bit better instead of being like it would have made it load a lot faster as well, for sure.
Yes,
I think a big.
I love my Wii U. I still use it. But the load times are killer, especially compared to the Switch, which is like super fast.
And that's because
the Switch can load Breath of the Wild faster than the Wii U can load its own menu. Okay.
And a big part of that is like on the Switch, when it loads up and first turns on, it's just loading the apps that you have. Like it's basically just showing you the folders. To whereas on the Wii U, it's loading up all of the apps you have, but it's also loading up the plaza thing. Like, it has to load up all of the different little Mii's.
Like a billion Mii's just like running in circles.
Whatever games or communities are the most popular, and all of the other information that it has to take in. But yeah, with going back to Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to it yet,
so,
but I'm excited. And
yeah, so they have one episode out, but there's a few key points that I wanted to talk about episode because they debuted their podcast with an interview with some Breath of the Wild developers, including Onuma and Fujibayashi. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm sorry if I totally butchered it.
Fujibayashi,
Fujibayashi, and Onuma specifically.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to cut this part out.
Fujibayashi. Yeah.
We are going from Nintendo Power to the interviews.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to pick out the 3 interviews, correct?
Yeah, I've got them here.
Okay, so this will be a different video. One will be about Nintendo Power, and then this one will be like going over the information from the interviews.
Yeah.
So start this
as
if it was...
It's kind of one piece of news, because these interviews are from the podcast. So there's my segue.
All right, go.
Okay.
Because like the way I was thinking of it is like, I was going to title this segment "Everybody Watching Live," some behind the scenes.
Oh, you guys got a taste of behind the scenes.
So the way I was imagining this is you have the video. If this was one full video of the interviews and Nintendo Power, then it would be a long video with the title Nintendo Power Returns or whatever, something similar to that. So someone may not be interested in that, but they may be interested in like new Zelda information revealed or like whatever, like
we can split the topics.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking, because
you're the manager, Jesse.
Right, so
however you want to split these topics.
All right, so start this as if it was we have new blah 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 from Onuma.
Let's do that. I'll start now. Okay. So we have some new interviews with Onuma and Fujibayashi, whose name I hope to God I'm pronouncing right. They were interviewed on the new Nintendo Power podcast, and they talked about. They actually did a ton. They had a ton of information that they went through, but I just picked out a few of the coolest points, or the ones that were my favorites, just because otherwise we'd be here for 20 hours instead of the normal 2. So the first one is where they talk about the inspiration behind the champions. Should I just read some of the article here, or should I just recap it? Jesse, what do you think? Jesse.
Sorry, you hear me?
Oh, you're here.
I don't know how the mute button got pressed on the microphone.
Oh, I don't know, man.
I don't know how that happened. But yeah, just recap.
Yeah. Okay, so just a quick recap. They talk about the champions, and Chris Slate, who's one of the hosts for this podcast, he sort of asked them what the inspiration behind the characters and the podcast was. Fujibayashi put it, he kind of came up with the idea that he thought, if Hyrule's expecting this huge thing, it wouldn't just be one hero that would go and face him alone. They would probably have sort of a gathering of all the races and a fellowship, if you will.
Because there are the other races like the Gorons and Zora.
Because all these races they coexist together in Hyrule, so it makes sense that there would be someone from each of these races representing their race, in like Congress almost. Hyrule Congress. So they're sort of like their own hero or their champion, And so they thought about, okay, well, if you have a Gerudo champion, what would they be like? And if you have a Goron champion, he'd be strong. What would he be like? And then they kind of came up with the champions from there. But then what's interesting is Onuma says that this was an idea he had when he started making Zelda games.
Yes.
And he wanted to call them, initially when he came up with the idea, he called them the Hyrule 4, which sounds like a superhero, like a Marvel team, you know?
Yeah.
Fantastic Four, I guess. And then he came up, these two people that were heavily involved in Breath of the Wild came up with these ideas separately, but they both had the same idea, which is cool.
Was this what you were talking about earlier when you mentioned that Al said he came up with this idea like 20 years ago?
Mm-hmm. You're cutting out, Jesse. I'm sorry.
All right. Earlier you mentioned, was this the same idea that he came up with like 20 years ago that he wanted to use for Ocarina of Time or whatever? Or was that something different?
No, that's this.
All right.
So it's cool to see this idea come from like 20 years prior and like come to fruition now, you know?
Yeah. So with that, he said he had the idea of the 4 races.
The Hyrule 4.
Yes.
Yes.
The Rito didn't exist in Ocarina of Time.
Yes.
Or actually, now this is speculation. It was there was the Ura expansion, which was supposed to introduce new areas, new dungeons, and stuff. What if one of the areas was the Rito? And
Maybe.
That would be the race for that.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
But I think when there's some screenshots that you guys should look on Twitter. Source Gaming, Push Dustin posted some screenshots from the Masterworks book. That's like basically the Hyrule history of just Breath of the Wild, right? And it's got a ton of concept art and stuff. And in the concept art shown there, it shows a concept of the champions. And there was originally a Kokiri champion instead of a Rito champion. But I guess eventually they changed it to Koroks, and that there was no champion for the...
I bet they changed the champions from Ocarina of Time to the Sages.
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah, because that makes sense. The Sages are basically a collection of one individual from each race. You have your Kokiri, Goron, Zora,
and in the same way,
Gerudo,
they're
Sheikah.
Leaders like in Breath of the Wild. Like you have the King Zora's daughter in both games. You have the leader of the Gerudo tribe in both cases.
Yeah.
You have I don't know if you would call him the leader of the Gorons, but like the main one.
Darunia? Yes. He is he's the big brother.
I mean in Breath of the Wild.
Oh, in Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild, Daruk, I think, was either their leader or like their strongest warrior or something like that.
Because I looked at Daruk in the same way that I looked at the one that turns into the boss from Twilight Princess. He isn't the leader, but
Darbus, yeah.
Yeah, Darbus is like the one, if like something's attacking, you're gonna go to him. Like he's the strongest. And then the Kokiri, obviously, like I think in Ocarina of Time they just chose Link's friend. The Kokiri aren't in Breath of the Wild, but the Koroks are, which are the same.
Yeah, thing. Well, they are the same race, but they're evolved or unevolved according to some state. Depends on what, like, it's not really confirmed, but depends on how you want to look at it. But they also talk about their favorite champions in this interview, and both of them picked Mipha, which is a fan favorite as well.
Yeah, I think I read this. Aonuma said that he picked Mipha because of the story added in the DLC.
Yeah, he said Urbosa originally in the base game, but then after all the stuff they added in the DLC, he now likes Mipha as his favorite, which is interesting. Because I think that the DLC added more about baby Sidon that I liked. He's so cute. God, I do really like Sidon as a character, but yeah, I don't know. Personally, like, Jesse, who's your favorite champion? Because I personally really like Daruk. I think he's just like a super fun and very positive character, you know, and he's got your back.
Does anybody say Rivoli?
I don't think so. Rivoli, I'm just gonna say he's a jerk. Okay.
I would say, like, I would say the like maybe Mifa. I would say Urbosa, but I look at the Gerudo.
Urbosa's cool.
I look at the Gerudo in general are just like, not only are they, no, I don't. I was gonna say not only are they racist, but they're sexist. Cause like they don't, but they're not really racist.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, the Gerudo, so they have this law in
The
Breath of the Wild
Gorons
where
are racist
men can't.
a little. And the
Gorons
Zora.
love everyone.
No, like
But-
in Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, like they look down on the other races, and then it's only after you beat the Dodongo's cavern that they accept you as brother.
True.
And then in Twilight Princess, like they just keep everybody out. That's not a Goron.
Yeah.
Until you prove yourself to them.
Yes.
And then the Zora in Breath of the Wild, some of the older ones are just
They're
like,
racist.
Yeah,
The old ones.
they're 100% racist. So,
Yeah. But the Gerudo, like, they have that law where you can't enter the town, right?
Yeah, that's not even
because you're a man.
It's not
But-
even like that's how bad it is. It's not even
Yeah.
that they're just like they just choose to be sexist. It's like
Yeah.
they're so
like their law.
sexist. They've made it an official law.
But counterpoint to that is that when you go into Gerudo Town in drag and you interact and you do all side quests and stuff, about half the Gerudo you talk to totally just see through your disguise and just don't care. They're
Yeah.
totally like, yeah, I know you're a man in disguise, but I don't really care. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. Don't worry. So, including their like the chief of their military, and Riju, like they totally just see through it, you know. So, I would say that I think it's more of just like a old rules thing,
Yeah.
and that most of the Gerudo themselves aren't. But I don't know. It's I like Urbosa as a character because I think she kicks ass, but Revali I felt a little more positive about after the DLC because there's a bit of like that whole thing with him like pushing himself really hard and he like, you know, like trying to master Revali's Gale, and like injuring himself doing that, and then he just turns out to be still just a overconfident jerk anyways, so
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. No one likes him.
So, move on to the next
Yes,
interviews.
they
Because we have
talk about
2 more that you picked out, right?
Yes.
Okay.
They also talk about the inspiration behind Eventide Island. I picked this bit because I really think that's a cool topic. I really liked Eventide Island.
Yeah, a lot of
it-
people assumed it was a throwback to Link's Awakening.
Yeah.
So,
So I'll read you the quote here on it. Fubiyashi says, "Initially, when you start Breath of the Wild, Link wakes up naked, and the first weapon you have is probably a tree branch. When I started the game, I definitely felt that adventure and survival, and as the game progresses, it definitely feels a lot safer because you have so much more armor and equipment. So in the game, you can, of course, get to this island at any point, but you'll find it probably around the middle of the game. For me, actually, it was really early in the game.
I
But
think I made it. I noticed it, like as soon as you go to like the Akala Tech Lab or whatever.
yeah,
But I don't think I reached it until after the first or the second dungeon.
okay.
Or
Yeah, I
the
made it
others.
there pretty early, but after I left the Great Plateau, I pretty much went to Dueling Peaks and then all over Necluda first before I did anything else.
I'm not going to dab.
But yeah, but anyway, that's a bit off topic.
Yeah.
So he says, as the game progresses, it feels a lot safer because you have so much armor and weapons. So in the game, you can, of course, get to this island at any point, probably find it around the middle of the game. Wanted to go back to that initial feeling of survival and pressure and not knowing what kind of enemy you'll encounter. So that's why we implemented that island in the game. So it's sort of like a throwback to the beginning of the game. But a lot of people mention it being a throwback to Link's Awakening, and I think that's valid just because, first of all, the top of the mountain is called the Peak of Awakening.
Yeah.
I know that like just a visual of the island is it's similar to artwork from Link's Awakening, like just the way the island's laid out, smaller, but kind of visually similar. But
I think
it's also it feels very reminiscent of the beginning of Link's Awakening, you know?
Except it doesn't disappear when you're finished.
Yes, thankfully, yes. But yeah, I mean, it's a cool. It's I think one of the most creative shrines in the whole game. It's like it's not just the shrine; it's this whole island that you've got to kind of conquer.
Yeah, it's like the largest shrine.
And you have like, yeah, and you have like no
largest.
equipment, and you got to take on like a Hinox or Hinox, however it's pronounced, really. And it's just a really cool, very challenging but really cool shrine. I really like that one. Any other thoughts on that one, Jesse?
The only thing that I can really think of, like, I loved it. I thought it was a great idea. It's definitely a throwback. I didn't think about it being a throwback to the beginning of the game, but it is. But my favorite thought is, if it is supposed to be like that nod to Link's Awakening, or a lot of people theorized that it was the island from Link's Awakening, it was just the other part of it like vanished or whatever. Because it does vanish after the game, and it's really the only island. Like, this is the largest version of Hyrule that we've ever gotten, and
yeah,
this island's supposed to be off the coast. Was it Labrina from Link's Awakening?
Yeah,
or was that
Holodrum? Or
no, those are the
Labrina and Holodrum are from the Oracle game.
Yes,
Koholint Island is Link's Awakening.
I always call it Koholint. Is it Koholint?
Yeah. I have no idea.
But
so many people got mad at the way I say things like,
yeah,
I used to say Deku instead of Deku, and
I used to say Dooku.
Dooku.
Like Star Wars.
Dooku. Oh yeah. Oh yes. But yeah, just people also get mad that I say Ocarina,
Yeah.
and you say Ocarina, but I just chill out, guys.
No, see, that's the thing is, like, people in different areas pronounce words differently. Like, I have a friend in that's getting off topic. Anyways, people just pronounce different words differently.
That's just the world we live in.
So with this Eventide Island, which is a clever name, because the island itself is like an event, and it does like the tide or the waves or whatever. I think that's what crashes Link into the island in Link's Awakening. So Eventide.
Yeah.
So in this, I thought, like, if this was supposed to be a callback to the island from Link's Awakening, then after A Link to the Past, Link didn't make it that far from Hyrule before he crash landed. So it's like, he's like a few hundred yards away, so like he must have like set sail from Hyrule after A Link to the Past, and then like 2 minutes later crashed onto the island. It's like, he's definitely not the sailor that
he's no Wind Waker Link. When it comes to sailing.
Yeah. So people that were theorizing that it was the same island, just like most of it disappeared like in Link's Awakening. I just I keep thinking about that. That's like, Link must be horrible with boats then. Like,
he's not good at it.
Yeah. So what's our last?
Well, the last one, they talk about the inspiration behind the runes. And I'll go over the quotes here on Mr. Slate asked them again sort of about how they settled on choosing the runes instead of items. Fubiyashi says, initially we were thinking about getting items like in the older Zeldas, just in order, but when we considered that this world was so open and a free world where players could go anywhere, we thought perhaps providing them with what they need from the very beginning was important, especially if players are going to play in order or not in a specific sequence. We thought it would be very important to have these tools from the beginning. So when we were thinking about items or runes, we were thinking perhaps doing that from early stages of development. Well, what's funny, Jesse, is that I made a video a bit ago on Nintendo Prime's channel called The Importance of the Great Plateau. And pretty much my point of that video is summed up in this quotation here, is that so although that was a few months ago that I made that video, but yeah, it's I see what they're going for. Like the thing that's great about Breath of the Wild is that while it can, some people view it as a downside, especially you because you don't get your hook shot. But this plateau provides you with these 4 runes, and like those are basically Link's inventory for the whole game. And though there's only a handful of them instead of like a whole huge collection of items, they have like great application, and they are used differently and creatively throughout the whole game. Um, so yeah, it makes sense that they would have them all sort of getting, and sort of distinguishing them from items that you get throughout the game, because everything you pick up breaks.
Yeah.
So you need something that won't break, and makes sense that it wouldn't break, because it wouldn't make sense for you to get boomerangs, right? And then those don't break, but your sword does for some reason. So it makes sense that they'd have to distinguish it somehow, like from the rest of your items, by having them as runes, right? That's just my thought on top of that. Any other thoughts, Jesse?
No, I think it makes perfect sense because they are the items that the dungeons themselves are based around. Like, you can get into tricky situations to where it's like you need a fire arrow to get past a certain spot. But then if you're creative, you can use what you already have. So like you can throw down a fire sword or something and then pick it up with one of the magnesis rune and then use it to touch whatever it is that you need to burn. So there are situations like that, and instead of like needing an ice arrow to shoot platforms in the water like you had to do in like Majora's Mask, I believe there were areas where you had to do that.
Yes. Yeah. The whole Great Bay Temple was the shtick of that temple.
Yeah. So instead of using ice arrows to do that like you did in previous games, it gave you something that you would never run out of.
Yeah.
So you had the ice rune, and then that's how you can make platforms and stuff. So I think it's really good, especially since in this game, it's kind of like the opposite of A Link Between Worlds, to where A Link Between Worlds, you get the item rented to you where you could just go and buy it.
Yeah.
And then you have infinite ammo as long as your meter doesn't run out. But with this, it's like not only can you run out rather quickly, but there's a chance that the actual item will break. So you can run out of arrows and stuff, or the swords, the boomerang, stuff like that will actually break, as opposed to having infinite in A Link Between Worlds, which was the last traditional Zelda game that was made before Breath of the Wild.
Although I think Triforce Heroes, although the obtaining items is different in Triforce Heroes, because you just get them in the levels you need them, but the stamina gauge, the purple meter, is the same. I think that carried over, right?
I think so.
I never finished Triforce Heroes, so I can't say for sure. If I don't really remember, but
and then also one thing that I wanted to add was, instead of going out and buying the main weapons that you need, you find them all over. So like you just defeat an enemy and then you get their weapon. So like it almost
like
literally
in Wind Waker,
opposite,
but better because you can actually keep it. Yeah.
So was that all of it?
That's a handful of. Yeah,
there was a lot more.
There was so much that they went over, but that would take ages to cover it all. And this is only 3 out of like a dozen, and it took us this long. So yeah, like I think we can grab our last piece of priority news here, Jesse,
before jumping into my favorite part.
Yes.
All right.
So why don't you go ahead?
All right.
I won't be the messenger of this bad news.
Or good news. All right.
Or good news, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah. All right. So Zelda Breath of the Wild's Champions Ballad DLC marks the conclusion of the game. No more Breath of the Wild DLC that we know of. They might surprise us and release another Xenoblade type situation when a future game comes out. It would be cool to see if they ever come out with an Animal Crossing, or if Metroid comes out and you get the blaster cannon or whatever it's called from Metroid, or you can like find Samus's armor. Like if they do a cross promotion with some future games, whether it's the Kirby game coming out or whatever, it would be cool if they continued it like that. But as for huge DLC packs like the Champions Ballad or the first DLC pack, Master Trials, we apparently won't be getting any more of that, which is good and bad. It's a bittersweet ending, I guess is how you could say it.
I mean, I know a lot of people wanted more out of the DLC, and I kind of agree and disagree. Like I really enjoyed what DLC we got. I thought it was really great to just sort of flesh out the game more.
Yeah.
But like I just, if someone was like, hey, there's more game for you, I'm like, great. So I wouldn't argue either way.
And in the video that we posted earlier talking about all of the potential Zelda games to come in 2018, 19, 20 and beyond, there was a part where I was talking about with games like Call of Duty where they have a lot of DLC, or even Assassin's Creed, there is a lot of times where the main developers, as soon as the game's finished, they might work on one DLC pack themselves, but soon after, or even before the game finishes, they begin pre-production of whatever the next game is. And then they have like 90% of the team will move on, and they'll have 10% stay and create additional content to keep people interested in the current game while they work on the new game. Or sometimes the entire team will move on, work on the new game, and they'll just hire another team to work on DLC, which is what a bad situation for this happened with Street Fighter V, where Capcom hired a second team to work on some of the DLC characters. And one of the DLC characters, I remember it was a big news story when it came out. A lot of people complained that the artwork for the character just looked horrible compared to the other characters. So like like it looked like, instead of it being a character designed for the PlayStation 4, it looked like they just brought up a character from like a PlayStation 3 and just had it in the game. Like it was missing a lot of the same details and everything that the other was. So there are bad situations where a team just doesn't put as great of work as the original development team. But hopefully that's not going to happen for Breath of the Wild, because as we stated, Breath of the Wild is finished, which means I assume sometime in 2018 you can expect a not a collector's edition, but like a Game of the Year edition or a complete edition.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be down to get it myself because I don't want to buy the game twice.
Yeah.
But it would be really cool for them to do a Game of the Year edition.
Yeah.
That just includes the DLC already.
I would imagine the actual game would drop to like $50, and then you can buy the complete edition for $60.
Yeah, that seems fair.
So, to give a little bit more on this, Nintendo Life says, it might sound like stating the obvious, but The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild's Champions Ballad DLC officially brings the game to a close. There will be no more content released from this point onwards, Nintendo has confirmed. But as I said, I'm still skeptical of this. I believe they will be cross-promotion like there was with Xenoblade.
Like the Xenoblades,
Yes, just not like a paid-for DLC. Zelda series producer Eiji Aonuma delivered the news. Where's the Eiji Aonuma? My mind's
Eiji Aonuma? Eiji? I don't know.
Delivered the news in an interview with Famitsu, stating that the release of the DLC means the game is now complete. There will be no further DLC expansions. So no more expansions. But we might have the small quests. We already know that work has begun on the next Zelda outing, so it makes sense that the team at Nintendo has shifted its attention away from Breath of the Wild. However, given the incredible success of the game and the fact that other publishers are supporting their big games for months, sometimes years after release, one does wonder if it would have made more sense for our Numenus team to continue to expand the world of Hyrule with DLC packs throughout 2018. I think they would be happy to continue working on DLC because I think they know fans, as great as the first DLC season pass worked, fans will continue, especially after winning Game of the Year, because they could easily be like, oh, here's DLC Pack 3, it adds in the dungeons you all wanted. And then everyone's just going to like storm in on it. But
Yeah.
I think it kind of makes more sense to get a fresh start on whatever the next Zelda game is, and then just include whatever you were going to add to Breath of the Wild, just make that part of the next game.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if anyone's really, really down about the fact that there's not going to be more DLC, like, this just means they are working on the next Zelda game. That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's good news, you know?
And as the video that we posted earlier, they're not just working on the next Zelda game, but potentially at least 2, and then most likely 3, because there is the Switch team, or the home console team, and the handheld team, which Nintendo already confirmed they were experimenting and working on stuff with the 2D Zelda games, so you can expect that next year or 2019. I don't think it'll come out any later than 2019. It'll probably come out next year, because that would be, if it comes out in 2019, I think that would be the longest development time Nintendo has had with a handheld game since Phantom Hourglass.
Yeah.
So usually it takes 2 to 3 years, and I think 2018 would mark the 3-year run. So 2019 would be 4 years, which is almost as long as it takes to create or develop an actual, like, main series Zelda game. So there's always that, and then of course Grezzo could be working on something. They hinted to something recently. There could be Hyrule Warriors 2. Tantalus, who worked on Twilight Princess HD, could be working on Skyward Sword HD. You never know. So there's always possibilities.
Yeah, and just think about how much stuff came out between Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild. Like, pretty much since Skyward Sword, we got the whole Zelda series again. or close to it. Like, I'm hyperbolizing a bit, but that time between 2011 to now was a great time to be a Zelda fan, because we got all of these releases, and we got Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask 3D. We got A Link Between Worlds. We got Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD.
Triforce Heroes.
Triforce Heroes. I feel like I'm forgetting something else, but and Hyrule Warriors came out, and Legends
on both consoles.
So it's like, we had a great run here, man. Like, this is
the entire Zelda collection was available on whether it was the 3DS eShop or the Wii U eShop. You could even play the DS games on your Wii U.
Yeah. So I mean, it was a great time to be a Zelda fan. So I'm really looking for whatever they've got coming up, because I feel like they've been just pulling out all the stops, and I'm looking forward to what's next.
Yeah.
Gonna be good.
All right. So I think we're done with the news.
Yes. 2 hours of news.
Oh, wow. Someone mentioned earlier, are we going to talk about the there is, I guess, a Link to the Past inspired game?
A Zelda game or like an indie game?
An indie game. Kind of like Rhyme, I guess.
Oh, okay.
But more Link to the Past instead of Skyward Sword. I'm trying to find it. RPG said, have you covered the release of Zelda: A Link to the Past homage, Close Blossom Tales? So, quick Google of that. Action RPG's Tales is set to bloom on Switch eShop. Let's take a quick look at it. You can Google it. Oh my god, it is. It is a total ripoff of A Link to the Past.
It's called Bloom?
Blossom Tales.
Is that right?
Blossom Tales.
Blossom Tales?
Yes.
Blossom.
unrelated to the Powerpuff Girls.
Oh wow, yeah, that is very much a Link to the Past inspired.
Yeah, it's like,
wow.
It looks if they would have made an 8-bit version instead of a 16-bit version of A Link to the Past.
Yeah.
Maybe, but like it looks somewhere like it doesn't look as good as
it looks a bit in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks somewhere in the mid range.
It's like a 13-bit.
Like 12.
A 12-bit.
Yeah, no, that's very good. That looks good.
Yeah.
That's all I gotta say. It looks neat.
Do you want to talk about it real
there's
quick?
There's a nice little picture on Google here that has like a Super Nintendo box art mock-up actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we should move on to the Curiosity Shop.
All right. Give me 2 seconds. Trying to.
Okay. While you do that, I will eat 1 potato chip. Here it is.
All right. So everybody in the chat, we are moving to our Zelda mailbag, the Curiosity Shop, where we answer your Zelda submitted questions. So, for the people in the chat, leave your questions. I see RPG's taking over the chat for now. Leave your.
He is very active.
Leave your he's active. Used to be active in the actual videos as well, but he always comes into the live videos that I do.
Well, it's good to have you, RPG.
Yeah. So everybody watching, the 6 of you, I guess half of you dropped out since earlier. But if you have any Zelda questions that you would like to have answered, please comment them, and if we have enough time when we're finished, we will get to them. So, and for now, we can start the Curiosity Shop. So,
yes,
have to do a new intro for this. Again, you guys are seeing behind the scenes stuff. All right, what's up, everybody? I am.
Sorry.
You're fine. What's up, everybody? I am Jesse, or Game Over Jesse, as some of you all may know me, and here with me to join on the Curiosity Shop, our Zelda mailbag, is Daniel. Daniel, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, everybody. I'm Daniel. I run this DAG show with Jesse, so
yes,
yeah.
You just finished yesterday editing the video that we just published this morning of the Zelda games to come in the near future. So the Curiosity Shop.
It's a fun video.
Yes.
It was fun to work on.
Thank you. If you don't know what the Curiosity Shop is, you can comment below, send in your Zelda questions, and if we have enough time at the end of the show, we will go through and answer as many as we can. If you want to make sure your question gets on the show, like Casey, George, and Michelle has, you can go to our Patreon at patreon.com/GameOverJesse, where you can sign up for a lot of exclusive stuff. You can join on the podcast. You could be a guest, have your voiceover in certain videos, like theory videos or news videos that we do. And your question will take priority. So going to our first question here from Casey. Says, what expectations do you have, and what additions would you like to see in the next Zelda iteration? Thanks for all the content. Now, we've already answered this a few times, but since they did go to Patreon, we will do another quick answer. So, what I want to see, traditional themed dungeons. I want to swim underwater. I want to a larger variety of enemies, weapons, and stuff. Like we had Lizalfos and a bunch of other great enemies in this game, but like there was no Dark Nuts, there was like there wasn't a lot of those classic stuff. There was like, it seemed like 5 or 6 different enemies, and then each of those enemies had like, oh, here's a fire type, here's a water type. It was like the Pokemon version of Zelda.
Lizalfomon.
Yeah. It was like, it's like they took the normal Lizalfos and then like.
Then there's the ice one, and there's the lava one.
It's like Eevee, to where like there's the fire evolution, there's the lightning evolution. Yeah. So just more variety, traditional dungeons, swim underwater, and if they want to make me happy, of course, all that
Mm-hmm.
would already make me happy, but I would love to see Loft Wings. I
Oh.
want Loft Wings. I really do. And I thought Skyloft is a great idea. City in the Sky, Twilight Princess is
Mm-hmm.
a great idea. Not only was that a dungeon, but it was the remains of Skyloft, which wouldn't be introduced until the next game. Rumor says Ocarina of Time and the Ura expansion was supposed to have its own sky temple.
Yeah. That's the thing is a lot of the times when they don't like if they have an idea, they want to put an idea in a dungeon in a Zelda game and they can't put it in. They'll put it in a future game.
Yeah.
I think they've gone on record saying that quite a few times.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we have all of these different things that was missing from Breath of the Wild that they could have implemented in DLC with new weapons, new items, and stuff. Instead, we got a motorcycle.
Yeah. Still cool.
Still cool. Still fun.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of missed opportunities, and I'm starting to think maybe they just saved all of that stuff, and instead of giving a piece of it in DLC, they're just holding it for the next Zelda game. So
Yeah.
that's my answer. What about you, Daniel? What additions would you like to see in the next Zelda?
Well, I think that, like you've said, we're probably going to get a handheld Zelda first, sort of maybe a 3DS game. If they still want to do 3DS stuff, that's fine by me. 3DS has been around for a long time, but like they seem to
It would
be
be really
on keeping
cool
it going.
if they did it like Fire Emblem Warriors, to where it was 3DS and Switch.
Yeah, yeah. But Zelda specifically, I'd really like to see a traditional, like, no, not too traditional, but like A Link Between Worlds for me really hit the nail on the head. Like, it was really great. Now this might be nostalgia talking because A Link to the Past was the first Zelda game I ever played.
Yeah.
Like my earliest childhood memories are of two games: A Link to the Past and Super Mario World. Those are like as far back as I can remember. Those two games. So those two, so seeing A Link Between Worlds is sort of like this, like Hyrule from my childhood reimagined like this and brought into the modern handheld game like that. It was awesome. But like I felt like A Link Between Worlds was very creative with their dungeon design, and I didn't miss having the weapons found in dungeons, the items, like having the items and just buying them, and that was fine by me. I don't need to find them in dungeons.
Yeah.
And I really liked how creative they used all those items. Especially like the hook shot you think of as like you pull yourself to an item or to an object or something, right?
Yeah.
But then they have that and they use the wall merging mechanic in conjunction with the hook shot, and then suddenly it's a whole new mechanic, right? So I really loved how creative that game was. It was a very great blend of old and new. So I think a traditional Zelda in the same vein as A Link Between Worlds on 3DS, and then in the meantime they have their team also something in the same vein as Breath of the Wild, because as much as I loved traditional games, I really love Breath of the Wild as well, and all of its departures. But yeah, I do think that those really intense dungeons is the only thing missing for Breath of the Wild for me.
Yeah.
Because I just really like how interesting the dungeons can get, and like these really long form dungeons that it's like the missing piece for me. Like I loved everything else about Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
People rag on the weapons breaking. I'm cool with that. People rag on about the runes or
they said
things,
from the like before we even knew the title of it, they said they were going to change the formula. So
yeah,
breaking weapons
so they did,
is an
and
easy way.
yeah. So like all that stuff I was cool with, but like I did always up until the release, like I was expecting some long form dungeons just because that is sort of what Zelda was all about for me. Maybe not to the same extent as Skyward Sword, where it felt like even the over dungeon, but yeah, like I think that they could have had a nice balance between huge open world and you can explore and do the dungeons in any order, and having these really intense puzzles and fun dungeons. But maybe I'm dreaming too big. I don't know. But that's what I would love to see. I felt like that was the only thing Breath of the Wild was missing, was just some really nice long dungeons. And if they couldn't do that, more of the Divine Beasts then.
Right.
But if they had like just 4, like in Majora's Mask, like just 4 really intense dungeons that were these Divine Beasts, like, sweet.
Well, maybe a bit off topic, but with Majora's Mask, some people, when they think of Majora's Mask, they do think 4 dungeons, but Iconic Castle was sort of its own dungeon.
That's true.
So
yeah, and same with like the Gerudo hideout. Yeah, so I guess really, like Majora's Mask, though, the thing is that game sort of I feel like Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess, those two games are their opposites.
Too. I didn't even think about that. In Breath of the Wild, they said they wanted to make it feel like... they also said this for Skyward Sword, that there wasn't really any challenge in the overworld, so they wanted to kind of make it dungeon-esque to, like, just to get to the area that you need to. And even in Ocarina of Time, like, sneaking around the Gerudo, the Thieves' Hideout or whatever.
Right.
Like,
that's true.
Gerudo Fortress, because you would go in and out of the different rooms saving the prisoners, and then you'd have to like sneak around the guards. A Link to the Past, when you first make it to the Dark World and you get to the area where I think you have to follow the monkey or whatever. To get to that.
There's
dungeon.
Like the hedge maze and.
Yeah. So like even.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I guess they've always done that. It's just Majora's Mask takes it to the, or not Majora's Mask, Breath of the Wild takes it to the next level. So that's interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like I've held this theory of Twilight Princess and Majora's Mask are sort of opposites in a way, in that Majora's Mask, really the meat of the game is outside the dungeons in the world and doing side quests.
Yeah.
And Twilight Princess, the real meat of that game is the dungeons themselves. Not to say that there's like no side quests in Twilight Princess, or that the dungeons in Majora's Mask don't matter.
There's dozens of side quests.
Yeah.
The thing is,
but I just feel like the main thing that I look forward to in Twilight Princess is the dungeons and how great those dungeons are. And the main thing I look forward to when playing Majora's Mask is the side quests.
Yeah.
You know?
All right. I think we can move to the next question.
Yes, let's. We're getting off topic
it
again.
kind of goes on a similar subject. George, a huge supporter for the YouTube channel, says, "Sweet. I'm sure it's been asked before, but with the news that no more DLC is coming out for Breath of the Wild, do you think the next main Zelda title will be a direct sequel? And do you think they're going to go for a more cinematic feel for the storytelling? Because they kind of went that route with Breath of the Wild. And I feel like they can go bigger and better for the next one, especially if they give Link a voice and flesh him out more as a character, even if it's not a direct sequel, but an entirely new entry in the timeline." So I remember when Hyrule Warriors came out and everybody loved the focus on the cutscenes in Hyrule Warriors. There was an interview with Al Numa where he said, because fan feedback for Hyrule Warriors was so positive, that for Zelda Wii U, as it was known at the time, would have they were going to put more of a focus on the cutscenes, which we've seen with all of the memories and the voice acting in the cutscenes and stuff. So I don't know if the voice acting was because of the fan feedback from Hyrule Warriors, which didn't really have voice acting, but there was the narrator, that woman's voice.
Yeah, there was the narrator basically between levels.
Yeah. So apparently Nintendo's seen such positive fan feedback from that they decided to incorporate more focus of cutscenes into Zelda Wii U. And with the memories and the cutscenes and everything in Breath of the Wild being such a great part of it, it's, you know, a better way to tell the story than to just give us a diary to read. So, which they did do, but it would have been better seeing the actual cutscenes. So
I think both was good. Like I kind of liked having there was a bit of like with the like Zelda's diary and stuff and the King's diary, like a bit of having to fill in the blanks yourself.
Yeah.
And I think having the two in conjunction, like having the memories and having the diary and being able to sort of picture yourself, like I think that worked really well for me.
Mm-hmm.
But like I also felt like I wanted more memories than just the ones we got. Like I wanted to see more of the world and more of these characters interacting and stuff, right?
Yeah, and I think this was Nintendo's first Zelda game where they put this big of a focus on cutscenes. They said that in Skyward Sword they wanted to have more cutscenes than they did in any of the previous Zelda games.
Yeah, I think they did. They had a lot of cutscenes in Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
So she right near the beginning and right near the end. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So with Breath of the Wild, it looked like they continued that with the positivity received from the cutscenes of Hyrule Warriors, and then with Breath of the Wild, or the next game after Breath of the Wild, I think Breath of the Wild in a lot of ways was them experimenting to see what works and what doesn't. And if it does work, then they'll expand upon that with the next one. If it doesn't work, like a lot of people complained about too many shrines, no real dungeons. In the same way that they took feedback from Skyward Sword, and a lot of people complained there's no field, like it's not connected. It doesn't feel like a real world. It just feels segmented. So they ended up making the world in Breath of the Wild or Zelda Wii U this huge, ever-connecting world. So if they continue the pattern that they have, I expect even more voice acting from the sequel or whatever is next, and I expect even more from the voice acting or the cutscenes. And where this was Nintendo's first time doing voice acting and all the cutscenes had voice acting, I think they may have limited themselves to be like, we don't want to give too much, so we don't want to have too much voice acting or too many cutscenes, because we don't necessarily know how they're going to react. Now that they know it's going to be positive, I can see them. And this was also their first time working with this engine. Now that they've basically perfected it, I don't think it would take nearly as long to make a cutscene now for the next game as it would have for them to make that cutscene for the previous games. Yeah. Especially since not only do they have to make the cutscene to where it runs well on the Switch, but they also had to make sure that it was running well on the Wii U. Where if they put too much into a cutscene, then the Wii U might chug along and like drop some frames or something, to whereas the Switch might run it perfectly fine. So with them only worrying about the Switch, I totally expect more cutscenes and voice acting and maybe some stuff that we didn't even see in Breath of the Wild. Yeah. All right. So.
But do you think it's going to be a direct sequel?
Oh yeah.
Or a new entry? Because I don't think it'll be a direct sequel personally, because I think Nintendo kind of stopped doing that with Zelda.
I think it will be. I think it'll be like a Link Between Worlds and Triforce Heroes, to where Nintendo didn't even know. Because
and then they decided later, like
if you remember when a Triforce Heroes first came out, they were like, no, this doesn't take place on the timeline, it's its own thing, blah blah blah. Yeah. A few weeks later, they're like, no, it's not only a direct sequel to A Link Between Worlds, you play as the exact same Link that you did,
even though he suddenly changed art style.
And I think they did that.
Different.
I think they did that just to give people an answer so they would stop asking.
Yeah,
because it's like, fair enough. If this game takes place like outside the timeline, then it doesn't even count. So why should I be invested in the overall story? Especially when it's like, oh, this princess is cursed to wear bad
She's got
clothes.
A unitard. So, not quite as high stakes as Ganon being resurrected by Yuga.
Yeah. So with them like changing from that and being like, no, this is Link from A Link Between Worlds. It's the same person you spent 40, 50 hours with in A Link Between Worlds. Suddenly they're like, oh, now I have that personal connection with the character that I had from the previous game. To whereas if it's
even
just
if he
a new
suddenly
person,
looks different.
yeah.
They changed the look though, so it's like that's really sticks out to me.
Yeah.
You know, because it's a different art style.
So I think the next question, kind of long, but read what Michelle says. She had a longer question. If it was a YouTube comment, I probably wouldn't have taken it, or I would have shortened it. But where she is a Patreon member, I thought we kind of owe her support.
Yes.
So go ahead and read what Michelle says.
Fair enough. So Michelle Jones asks, I can't really think of much to ask. I'd love some more exploration into the Zelda movie topic. My thoughts would be to focus on the time travel aspect of time. My thoughts would be to do an overview of the Child Link segment, a portion of one of those 3 dungeons, meet the princess, discover Temple of Time, discover the Master Sword, go forward and find corresponding elemental temples, forest, water, or fire, using time travel mechanics as a key element of the movie, with sequels that explore the other 2 elements, providing it does well into the box office. It would be a huge moneymaker for Nintendo if they co-released it with another release of Ocarina of Time. Perhaps just not another remaster, but a complete rebuild from the ground up with the Breath of the Wild engine and re-recording of orchestral score from Ocarina of Time. This is a lot to add to the video, I realize. Such a film series would be an amazing opportunity for an up-and-coming director to take on such a huge project of 3 feature-length films, possibly a good idea for a Netflix exclusive. I look forward to the next video, regardless how much or little of these ideas you include. I enjoy the ideas you have. I'm an idea person who gets all sorts of ideas and theories about video games, especially Legend of Zelda series. But do you have any idea about how much a project might be executed?
All right.
So, I think I like the Netflix idea better, generally, like, because with a Netflix series, the episodes are usually like 45 minutes to an hour long. So if you have like a 22-minute TV episode, you can't really get into it as much, and you can't do as much development. But also, because you have these hour-long episodes and like 20 of them, you can really do a lot more world building and pacing and depth with characters. And if you only have, say, 2 hours of movie time to do that, sometimes it just doesn't, they can't do as much world building. In a video game, the world building is easier because you have to actually put that player in the world. But in a movie, a lot of times when you have these movie adaptations, they feel shallow because they can't do as much world building, right? So I think like if I had to choose one of these ideas, like I'd go with the Netflix series. That would be really cool. But
there was the rumor as well a couple of years ago. At that same
but
time, the interesting thing is we covered this on the last video, but the topic was so popular that everybody was commenting. But you weren't on that episode, so it's nice hearing your.
But
thoughts
I did
on
see
this.
the video. But
so a lot of people.
I would like an animated thing better than live action, though.
Yeah, like an anime series for Netflix.
Yeah, and I don't think I would like it to follow the story of Ocarina of Time, because they would have to change things or exclude things or something or add to it. And I think they just would need to make this a new Link, new incarnation of, and not make a game about it. Just keep it like it would still be in the timeline, but separate from the games. So I don't want a direct adaptation. I just like almost a new Legend of Zelda entry into the series, but it's a Netflix series. Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Sony did something similar last year with, might have been early this year, Ratchet and Clank.
They had a movie.
They remade the original game into a movie, but then they remade that movie into a game. There's even a joke with the game that's like, this is the game that was based off of a movie that was based off a game. And if you play the remake, it's not just the same game with higher resolution, and if you play the new game and you watch the movie, it tells the same story, but a lot of the stuff is very different. So I imagine it would be something like that. Like if you want an example of how this could possibly work, play through Ratchet and Clank, or if you played through the original, go and watch the new movie, and you'll see how an adaptation of a video game, because there hasn't really been a movie to where they took the exact same story from a game and made it into the movie. They usually just make up their own story for the movie.
Yeah.
But this was like very similar to the original. So I think it would be like the changes that you're talking about would be similar to that. But I do think a new story altogether would be good.
Yeah, now that doesn't mean they can't include some of the elements like time travel, which is heavily featured in many Zelda games.
Yeah.
Things like that. Like they could still use the Master Sword, Temple of Time, a lot of similar elements, but without making it a direct adaptation. Because I think Ocarina of Time is just, it's too beloved a game to adapt and have everyone feel like it was done justice.
Yeah.
You know? So like I don't mean to be defensive, like leave my game alone. Like that's not, but I just feel like if they were to do it, I want them to do it right. I want them to do a good job, and I don't want them to piss off a lot of people. And even if they did adapt the story of Ocarina of Time and change things, like personally I'd probably be fine with it, but I know a lot of people wouldn't. A lot of people would hate the changes, right?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like true to the story. But they could do a lot with the Netflix series. I think they could do more with that than they could with 3 films, because 3 films, though probably would have a higher budget, that's 6 hours, maybe 9, if they were long movies.
Yeah.
But if you have a Netflix series, then you have like 25 hours to work with.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
On the next question, we didn't include this in, but Ashley Icona, or Champion Ashley on YouTube, good friend of the YouTube channel, very popular in the Discord channel as well, or the Discord server. She asked almost the exact same question as our previous question with, or one of our previous questions. What kind of idea would you like the Zelda team to tackle in the next Zelda game? Similar to our first question from Casey.
Yes, almost the same question, yeah.
And then
I feel like
the next question from Discord asks something similar as well, with what style do you see the Legend of Zelda series continuing in? More of Breath of the Wild, Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess, or a different style? We have answered this in previous videos, but to give a quick answer, I would say the Zelda Wii U tech demo, or the Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I really like Breath of the Wild's art style. Like that just really hit the nail on the head for me. That or Wind Waker HD art style. Yeah. Short answer.
So our first question from YouTube is from Anna. She asks, will Nintendo ever make a Zelda game and or DLC in which the main supporting characters, i.e. the sages, champions, maidens, etc., are both alive and interactable with after clearing the respective dungeon? I was hoping to see the champions be resurrected in the newly released DLC and be able to be interactable with not only Link, but also the other characters in the game. Every Zelda game so far has had a habit of making these certain characters non-interactable after finishing the respective dungeon. Ocarina of Time, sages are in the Chamber of Sages, and their status of being alive or dead is a can of worms that I really don't want to open. Wind Waker, Medley, and Makar are alive and found in the Earth and Wind Temples, but are not able to be interacted with. Breath of the Wild champions are dead, and they are only seen in either flashbacks or cutscenes. I would go on, but I think you get the idea.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
my thought was, with the amiibo, the champions amiibo, they came out and said they were companion amiibos. The only other,
that's not what they did.
Yeah, the only other companion amiibo that they said was Wolf Link.
Yeah.
So maybe when they first announced the amiibo, they had the idea of doing it, and then they found it was too complicated to have the champions come and be partners with you. So that's my thoughts
That
on that.
that would have been really cool use of the amiibo, though, to
Yeah.
have it the same way as Wolf Link, where you have them as a companion.
And then
I would totally build my team of champions.
no. Just like in the same way that Wolf Link works, the more hearts you have when you finish the dungeon in Twilight Princess is how many hearts Wolf Link has. So
Yeah.
if they had it to where as many hearts as you have once you beat that version of Calamity Ganon in the dungeon,
Right.
is how many hearts that character has when you use your amiibo. So if you beat
that would be really cool.
if you beat Water Blight Ganon with 3 hearts left, then Mifa has 3 hearts. Or if you beat the boss without taking any damage,
or quickly eat before you finish. Eat something and then hit the final blow. That's how you do it.
So yeah, I think
That would be cool.
that would have been cool DLC. As for future games, I think it's certainly possible. Ocarina of Time, you pick up Princess Ruto to carry her around.
But I think she means after you beat the dungeon, right? And I think the only example I can think of where they actually did that would be in Twilight Princess, after you beat the Snow Temple, the mansion, you can snowboard against the Yetis. Otherwise, the fairies in Phantom Hourglass. They're like you beat their dungeons and then they're like your fairy companions. After that, but otherwise, like, they don't really do that. I would like to see that. That would be cool, especially if we could do something with the amiibos and have them be like sidekick type characters.
So,
but
to answer her question, do you think Nintendo will do this?
I want them to, but I don't think they will. I want them to, but I don't think they will.
There's a possibility, unless they give us just different versions of Link like they have in Four Swords and Triforce Heroes. Aonuma has mentioned that he wants to make a multiplayer Zelda game with like that's what the Zelda Wii U was originally supposed to have, some sort of multiplayer, and then he's mentioned that he wants to.
That was part of the conventions of Zelda he was wanting to break.
And then he recently, when Breath of the Wild released, he said he wants sorry, there's a comment getting annoying in the chat. It caught my attention. They mentioned your name, but it was blocked.
But it was blocked?
Yeah, they said, "Oh, Bergerson, you don't deal with shitty shit." So I don't know what that means, but apparently you don't take no shit. So
I don't, or he doesn't. I don't know.
You don't.
I just opened the chat back up. I haven't been listening to it for a while, but
it got marked as spam or whatever, so it didn't show up. Anyways, deleting this part out of the question.
Great.
With it being a multiplayer game, he's mentioned, I don't know if Nintendo will let him do it, but it seems if Aonuma had his choice, he wants to make a home console multiplayer Zelda game. And if they ever do that, a new idea would be, instead of giving just multiple Links, and Triforce Heroes, it was multiple characters that just happened to look like Link. A cool thing they could do is have you play as the different races. We've seen how they could work with Majora's Mask and then Hyrule Warriors. In Majora's Mask, each of the races that you played as had their own unique abilities. So it's not.
I don't know if it was you I talked to about this, but I remember having an idea a while back. Like a Zelda MMO. It weren't Link. You had to pick your character, and you could choose all the different races. That would just be cool, but not likely to happen. But super cool. Yeah.
All right, moving on to our next question.
Yes, let's.
Hylia Lex says, "What do you think the next Zelda 3DS game will look like? Please answer my question." I think it will look like Paper Zelda or an HD version of A Link Between Worlds?
Papers. They did, maybe jokingly, but they did in that Game Informer interview.
Yeah.
Sort of hint at it, or he suggested, and they said, "Oh, we're working on it," but that might have been a joke answer.
I think he pointed at a shirt as well.
Yeah, he had Link on his shirt.
Yeah, so I think it will be something like, if the joke was serious, then what will it look like? It will look exactly like a Paper Mario Zelda game. But realistically, I think it would just, if you look up an emulated version of A Link Between Worlds, like what it looks like running on an emulator in HD, I think that is most likely exactly what the next Zelda game is going to look like. It might have a slightly different look to Link or the world itself, but the just A Link Between Worlds HD is what I imagine it's going to look like.
And I think they have a really good look going. Like, I think they have a really good style with A Link Between Worlds, where it's very classic Zelda, like very classic. And I really like that look for 3DS Zelda titles. I think that works really well for that platform. Right. That's if they make a 3DS one, because they might just be moving everything to Switch from now on, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what I was meaning by with being HD. So take our next question from Grace.
Great. She says, haha, is it just... Oh, this is why you gave me this question. Is it just me, or does Daniel, that's me, aka the guy on the left, that's me, look a ton like Pippet from Skyward Sword? Grace, sure, why not? I'll take it. Pippet's a dignified knight. He's a character. He has a good heart, and he's not as skilled as Link, but he just wants to do the right thing and help his mom. So yeah, sure, Pippet's cool. I'll take it. What do you think I look like, Pippet, Jesse?
I haven't seen a resemblance. The only friend that I have, the only two people that I know that look like other people is my older brother looks like Ben Affleck.
Oh, really?
My friend looks like, what's his name? Grant.
Don't say Guy Fieri. Oh,
Grant Augustin from The Flash. My friend Simon, who used to be a co-host on the YouTube channel, used to look like, well, he didn't used to look like, he still looks like,
he still does.
He could be a body double for The Flash on the TV series, not the movie.
Yeah. I hear a lot of people say that I have a slight resemblance to Andy Samberg. That's what people say. It might be the gap teeth, or just might be the general handsomeness. But I mean, I'm no Kid Ellis with my hair, but that guy has some good hair, Jesse.
Minibin 232 or Minibin 20,032 says, give us Daniel and Lexi. So apparently some fan support for a duo, Daniel and Lexi.
Maybe we should have Lexi on the next one.
Yeah.
Just bring her back for one more.
And then you can take our
without you.
Yeah. No. Well, you did one without me with
we've both done one without the other one.
Yeah, with Rick.
Now we're even. So
but you can take
the last question.
You can take our final question here, which will probably be the title of the video.
Sure. The question is from Metroid Link. He asks, what are the dumbest Zelda theories?
Link is dead.
Link, yeah, you think so?
It is without a doubt the stupidest theory.
Yeah, I definitely don't buy it at all. I do think there's some kind of points to it, but it doesn't really hold up once you start trying to if you try to disprove it, it'll take you 10 seconds to totally throw the whole theory off.
The ideas and points that it uses, RPG in the chat, so we have someone in the chat saying they agree that it's the stupidest Zelda theory, but if you watch the video and you only take in what they say, it does make sense.
Yes.
If you only take in what they say. But if you look just like an inch deeper,
yeah,
they say like one of the biggest points they use is the reason Link in Twilight, or the skeleton that teaches you the hero shade in Twilight Princess is a skeleton, is because Link in Majora's Mask died while he's in the Lost Woods, and people that go in the Lost Woods without a fairy, which Link didn't have a fairy, end up becoming one of those things. The
Stalfos.
Stalfos, yes. So
yes. However, in Majora's Mask, Link is a child, and in Twilight Princess, the hero shade is an adult.
Yes.
So right there, the theory falls apart.
And the hero shade knows a lot of attacks and stuff that he did not know in Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask, like the final blow and everything else. There was the hint at a grave in Twilight Princess next to the castle that hints towards it being Link's grave, where it's like what is it? It's
like the cursed soldier.
Yeah.
Cursed swordsman sleeps here, or something like that.
Yeah, and it's basically the hero shade, because nobody knew he saved Termina or the world or whatever, or at least saved Hyrule from Ganon in the future. He comes in the past, and then he warns them, and then Hyrule kind of saves themselves. So with this, they don't really recognize him as the hero that he is. So he just goes on being like this really good swordsman, and then obviously the story just writes itself from there. It's kind of a mystery, but we know he ends up dying, and that grave hinted at being his. The skeleton's an adult. And the biggest thing that disproves it is Nintendo has confirmed that Link in Ocarina of Time is an ancestor to Link in Twilight Princess. So that means Link had to grow old enough to get married and have kids or whatever. The getting married part's debatable, but there is a theory that he marries Milan, which is why his grandson or great-grandson in Twilight Princess, your descendant Link that you play as, is a farmhand, because he grew up
and knows Epona's song.
And there's theories that Kokiri Forest is Ordon Village, since the Koroks or the Kokiri left when Link returned to where he was raised and like turned it into his own town or whatever. So that's,
and you know, people wonder like, well, then what happened to the Kokiri? But I think they did become the Koroks. I think they were kind of the Koroks all along. And just they took the form of Kokiri in Ocarina of Time to sort of take in Link into their community as a child, right?
The Deku Tree transformed them to make him feel more comfortable.
So
and then so those are all theories on their own, but you don't really need to add in those theories. It's just extra to back it up. But with Nintendo, like, they come out themselves and basically disprove the theory. Another thing that they use, aside from Link turning into the Stalfos and being dead, is that Majora's Mask, because Link dies, the game is based off of the 4 stages of grief, which Nintendo, I think it was Aonuma who directed Majora's Mask. It was the first game that he was able to like take control of, or at least the first Zelda game. In an interview, he was asked about this with the release of Majora's Mask 3D, and he came out and said that if you go to, like, he said it was interesting that people come to this conclusion or whatever, that each of the places are based off of their own thing, and he says it does make sense, but there's so much more emotion in each area that if you play through the game and only put one emotion to each area, then you're not playing the game right. That he doesn't want people going in being like, oh, this area is all about sadness, this place is all about forgiveness. He wants you to go in and see the happiness, the anger, the sadness in every place.
Which honestly, with Majora's Mask, it is such a rich game. There is a lot of that. That theory mentions that like the swamp area is the anger stage, right? However, there is anger. The king wants to execute the monkey, but the monkey, he's good. He's not angry. The Deku butler, he's sad because his son has vanished. You know, there's a lot more to each area than just one thing. Yeah.
And in that interview, what I took in the most is, and I'll try to look for the interview later to put a quote up, but I've mentioned this in previous videos before where I think I have shown the quote. But for them, like the people at Nintendo, to literally say you're playing the game wrong if this is how you're playing it, because they want you to get the full experience of the game, to get all of the emotions, not just playing it thinking one area is about one specific thing. I think that in itself is enough to be like, well, this theory is there. And then another thing is, like, a lot of people, what popularized the theory, of course, it came from Reddit or other Zelda theorists that came up on their own, but there has been people that have made their own video about it, and because they have millions of subscribers or 100,000 subscribers, people see that, or they see the views the video has and think, oh, well, since this person is so popular, it must be true.
Yeah.
So, because I've had people join our Discord server, there's a section where you can talk about Zelda theories, and sometimes people mention the Link is dead theory, and then I just like, usually I'll like copy and paste and like send them an interview where like Nintendo themselves disprove the theory, and they're like, well, why is the video so popular if it's wrong? And it's like, it doesn't have to be right to get a lot of views. It just has to be like
maybe just people just want to hear what the reasoning behind the thing.
Like, it just has to be
doesn't mean
clickable.
they buy into it. Yeah.
So,
well, I get what you're saying, but my theory might be dumber. It's a theory that for some reason still people hold on to, and that is the theory that Breath of the Wild takes place before Skyward Sword. And a lot of people are still talking about this for some reason, and it makes no damn sense because... Wait. This is actually a theory that people are still talking about. It's not.
See, again, this is so stupid that I'm going to Google...
I told you I had a dumber one.
Breath of the Wild before Skyward Sword. See, this is so stupid that I don't even believe that people believe it.
Yeah, no, but I've seen people talk about it, and they're like, well, I still think this because of 3 reasons. And I'm like, okay, but here's 20 reasons it's not. You know, you have the Temple of Time, which is built after Skyward Sword, and it's in ruins here. You have Onuma saying that it's after... Yeah.
I found a GameFAQs post, so let's read through this.
Okay.
Wedge47 posted 3 years ago, before we had any information. So see, that's 3 years ago. But he says, I was thinking of where the game could possibly fit in the timeline, and I think it could be cool if the game takes place before Skyward Sword in the timeline. It would explain a couple of things that we saw in the short video clip. Link isn't wearing the green... See, this is stuff that, like, 3 years ago, we can't go back that far.
Yeah. So, I know a lot of people also cited, like, the Sheikah technology is similar to the ancient robots, so it's probably that time, or the, I don't know, the people were even saying the Sailcloth made it a Skyward Sword sequel, and it's like, but the hook shots in some of the games, does that make it a sequel? Like, yeah, so anyways, Breath of the Wild is not before, it is after everything.
This is making me...
So I said I had a dumb one.
But this is so, like, my theory is
like willful blindness.
No, my theory is like, I have proof that people actually believe it. Yours is so stupid, I can't believe
you don't even believe
that people believe it.
Dude, I've seen people talk about it in our Discord server, and I'm like, no. Yeah, there's very people on our Discord will notice, like, I'm there and I read a lot of what people are talking about, but I don't post a lot in it. But when I do jump in, a lot of the time it's to heavily like disbar someone's stupid idea.
Alright, so someone says Sparrow's Nest in the chat says, "I believe in the converged timeline," which
Yes.
goes with you. Let's see here.
I stand by that theory, the converged timeline theory. Like before, this was probably a year ago now, well over a year ago. I made a theory video that I've cited often about if Breath of the Wild is what I call a dragon break.
Yeah, and
which is the converged timeline theory, basically. But
yeah, okay. So all you have, there are plenty of things to disprove your theory, your dumbest theory.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is in promoting in an interview with Game Informer, the same interview where I believe they mention Zelda, Paper Zelda.
Yes.
They say
he asks if it's before or after Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, he says like the only thing that he can say or whatever is that it takes place long after Ocarina of Time, during a time where they've had many battles with Ganon.
Yeah.
And Ganon, obviously, Ocarina of Time takes place long after Skyward Sword, but another thing, Ganon is a reincarnation of Demise. You can't be reincarnated before the thing that you're reincarnated from.
Exactly.
So that
there's so many things that would disprove, like every detail of this game disproves that theory.
All right, so this was fun. So I imagine you had your pick in your head. So what is a second theory that you think is stupid?
Oh boy. Oh, I didn't have one in my head. That was like my big dumb one.
No, that's what I'm saying is like this was the big dumb one that you had in your head. So what's one that you actually had to think of that's like this is stupid?
Gosh, Jesse, that's a hard one. I don't know. You want to use the Link is dead theory. So.
Mine would be, what was it? That.
Oh wait, that Link and Zelda are siblings. I think that doesn't hold up in my head.
I've
heard that one.
Breath of the Wild is takes place after Wind Waker.
Yeah, that doesn't hold up for me because most people, their evidence for that are two things: rock salt and Koroks.
Salt can't exist.
Salt. There is no salt in the whole world unless the world is flooded first.
So,
rock salt is mentioned to be from the ancient sea or whatever, but
Skyward Sword has an ancient sea that dries up.
That's true, and it's already ancient before Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's Hyrule is like on the coast. You know, what if there was more ocean before?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. So
or the rocks, the ground in those areas could just naturally have salt in them.
That's true.
That's where
you find it in ore in the game. So
so another thing is what was it? Really quickly, someone mentioned Ura Zelda 64 DD. I don't like.
Oh, watch our video about that.
I don't like when people say that Master Quest was the Ura expansion because it's like, we're the dungeons.
It's not the same thing.
We're the new items. We're the new areas to explore. All it is remixed dungeons. So no. But
I would say that Majora's Mask is closer, but it basically evolved into a new game almost.
Yeah.
You know.
But going back to the dumb theory about Wind Waker and whatever.
Oh yeah.
I hate how. What was it? Like they think just because of the two things, whatever, and then the Koroks, the Deku Tree, but the one thing that people apparently didn't see is during that. I want to say it's the same interview that I keep quoting with
Game Informer.
Yeah, with Paper Zelda and happening after Ocarina of Time, they asked about the Koroks and about how Nintendo worked on Wind Waker HD and then like alongside Breath of the Wild, and if there was any connection. And Aonuma said that the only connection is visual, that the Koroks look so similar because they literally just ripped it out of the game of Wind Waker and was like, oh, it's easier to just use these assets than to completely recreate what we wanted. And then they said, whenever they talked about the beta for Zelda Wii U at the developer thing, they said instead of having the 900 Koroks, the Koroks originally weren't even like that big of a part of the game. They didn't say whether they were in the game or not in the game. I imagine they weren't in the game at all, since in the one interview where they
especially having that master concept art now available, where we had a Kokiri appearance in the game.
So they mentioned that it was supposed to be a Kokiri champion at first instead of the Rito champion. So if you put those two together, and then the fact that the Korok puzzles that you would originally find were pedestals, similar to the ones that you would find in A Link to the Past's Lost Woods. There would be like the random pedestals you'd find on the ground.
Yeah.
They had artwork and screenshots of Breath of the Wild's beta or whatever, where they showed, and it had... We got more people watching now that we're answering questions. But there was, like, it would show just a blank pedestal on the ground, and I assume you would just put the Master Sword in it, and then it would disappear, and it would be similar to you collecting a Korok puzzle. But they thought it didn't really make sense to have random pedestals everywhere, so they changed it to the Koroks. And I guess when they changed it to the Koroks, they changed the Kokiri to the Koroks. So instead of having Kokiri Forest, it turned into Korok Forest.
Yep, that makes sense.
So that is why Nintendo saying, or Aonuma saying that with Breath of the Wild, the only connection the two have with Wind Waker, or Breath of the Wild and Wind Waker, the only connection the two have is visual. That the game itself doesn't really have anything to do with Wind Waker as like a sequel or whatever.
Yeah. However, unless it's from the Converge timeline, because then it still would include Wind Waker.
Yeah, but in that same way, like if it does take place like hundreds or thousands of years after Wind Waker, in that same way, like you could say Four Swords Adventures. I think that's the one that takes place after Twilight Princess.
Yes.
Has nothing to do with Majora's Mask. They're on the same timeline, but the games really don't have anything to do with each other. So,
you know what? I just thought of another dumb theory. Don't let me forget I have one. Okay, go on.
I was just going to say that in the same way that Four Swords Adventures takes place after Majora's Mask, but the two have nothing to do with each other, there's some possibility of the convergence timeline to where it technically does come after Wind Waker, but the games themselves don't really have anything to do with one another. Like a direct sequel or whatever. Your turn. So, what's your second dumbest theory?
Another dumb theory I thought of, and this one, like, I'm already always skeptical about theories that are based around Hyrule's geography, because that's not something Nintendo takes into account when they're making Zelda games, right?
I always say this. I'm always the person that says theories based around geography are stupid.
What? Sorry, you're cutting out, Jesse.
Like, I always say theories based around geography alone are stupid, because there's really quick, like, there's the quote from Nintendo where they say, like, the reason an area like Lake Hylia looks so different from one game to another, and it's located in a different area, is because if they, like, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the story, the lore, or anything like that. It's just if they made every single game looking exactly the same, then there's no surprises. It's just
it's not fun to explore then.
They literally said it's not fun if you already know where everything is and how to find it. So that's why one game, Lake Hylia, may be in the bottom left corner, and it may be really small, but in the next game it could be like in the middle of the map, like in Breath of the Wild. It's like sort of in the center of the map, beside
kind of close to the plateau.
That's what I was thinking of, the Great Plateau.
So Yeah, so I mean, like, I'm already skeptical when people cite geography for their theories because it doesn't hold up. Nintendo doesn't take that into account when they're building their games, and honestly, like, it's so different in every Zelda game that if there was like one inconsistency in one game, that would make sense, but because it's inconsistent in every game, it doesn't. So this was a theory that I heard before Skyward Sword was released. I was like one of those mad people with post-it notes on my wall trying to piece together the timeline. So we all knew one of those people. So that was me. I did think at the time that there was a split timeline. There was like two factions of timeline theorists back in the day. There was the split timeline people and the unified timeline people. So I was on the split thing. I didn't think there was three. I thought there was two at the time. But
Yeah.
one theory for the unified timeline theory back in the day was that Zelda 1 and 2 took place after Wind Waker because the ocean dried up.
Oh, it's always the ocean drying up.
Yep. And I'm just thinking like that makes no sense because after Wind Waker there's Phantom Hourglass and they go and off and like Hyrule is flooded like more at the end of Wind Waker, like the parts of Hyrule that are not flooded under the sea, that are like in that bubble, those get flooded. Like it gets more flooded than it was before, you know?
I could see, like, if there was a sequel to Spirit Tracks where it takes place in New Hyrule, I could see them trying to find, like, setting out to find the Triforce to restore their ancient land to like get rid of the flood, but
yeah. And then there was this theory about how the geography was like shifting because of natural occurrences like earthquakes and stuff, and so they were like piecing it together based on like how similar the geography was, and I was like, this is cringe word. But yeah, no, like there's in my head there's no way Zelda 1 takes place after Wind Waker because they're just Zelda, like when Zelda 1 was made, it was the only game, okay? Then Zelda 2 was a direct sequel. Then they made A Link to the Past, and they said when they were releasing it that it was a prequel to Zelda 1.
Okay, so
we it's just like way off.
We have a couple of comments about your dumb theory.
Okay, great.
Silverblade 6 says, he's going way back, haha, yeah, 2 timelines. And then he says, I was on the unified timeline side until Nintendo confirmed it with Hyrule Historia. RPG says, I still don't think there's 3. I don't believe in the adult timeline. But I think that's a joke.
Wait, the adult?
I think he's joking.
The adult timeline. Yeah, because usually when people don't believe in one, they don't believe in the downfall timeline. Yeah. But yeah, like the official timeline is not perfect, guys, but I do think it holds up.
Nintendo has already retconned their timeline.
Yeah, but it was workable
with Triforce
it's definitely not perfect.
Like I don't know where it goes. Like it's in a separate timeline, and then they're like, no, it is in the timeline.
Yeah, no, it's actually my biggest thing though when they retconned the timeline was it really bothered me when they took the Oracle games out of where, like, I thought it fit perfectly that they had Link to the Past and then the Oracles and Link's Awakening, and those 4 with that one character, first of all, made him badass, and also like they fit really well together. Like how Link, he's already a hero at the time of the Oracle game starting, and so it makes sense that the Triforce is unified in Hyrule Castle because he did that at the end of Link to the Past, and then at the end of the Oracle games, he leaves on a raft, which is where Link's Awakening starts. It all makes sense, and then they're like, nope, pull it out. Like, why?
Yeah, and then it's like there's 2 different links now.
Yeah, so I mean, that just bothered me that they did that, but the Oracle games, just because they don't take place in Hyrule, like it's pretty flexible where you could fit them, but like that was really the best spot for them, and then they pulled it out, and that broke my little heart. But otherwise, like, I don't have much issue with the timeline. I do think it's kind of weird that there is a downfall timeline where Link dies. Like, that, when I first read that, it felt a little off to me because, like, no, that's a game over screen. That's not a canon part of the game, but I don't know. I mean, Ocarina of Time always felt like backstory to A Link to the Past. You know, like the way if you watch A Link to the Past, there's like the little intro movie that, or not intro cutscene that sets up the story. And in that intro cutscene, they describe basically the events of Ocarina of Time.
Wait.
Like there was a hero, and then the Seven Sages happened, and Ganondorf became trapped, and he was sealed, and
wait. This is our curiosity shop. This is our mailbag.
Yeah.
Can we ask our own questions?
Sure. Why not?
Because I may have thought of a theory just now.
All right.
So, Ocarina of Time. You need a fairy to go in the Lost Woods.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll be lost.
You'll turn into a thing, whatever.
A Stalfos.
Okay. If Ganon or Ganondorf goes into the Lost Woods, is that why they took Link to the Kokiri Forest for protection as a baby or whatever? Because they could have...
You would have to go through the Lost Woods to get there?
Yeah, because there's the bridge that goes across to the Lost Woods, and then there's the... It could have even been taken as a baby to the Sacred Meadow, to where like you need to actually go through the Lost Woods. So,
but Ganon, you know what?
Or Link
he did go to the. He went to the Deku Tree.
Yeah, but that's just across the bridge. So it's like maybe you don't have enough time to get cursed or whatever. So,
I always thought that when the Kokiri were talking about how like they can't leave the forest,
and
for example,
people. Sorry, what?
Sorry, I was thinking whenever the way I interpreted it in Ocarina of Time when you're playing, the Kokiri talk about how they can't leave, they'll die, kind of thing, right? They're like bound to the forest, and that the Deku Tree protects them, and they like if they leave the forest, you know, they can't because they'll die. I always thought that was sort of a fear mongering thing, like he just told them they can't leave the forest, but they actually could. But they just believed that they couldn't because it's too dangerous.
Yeah,
you know?
you go out of the forest, and then like directly to your left is one of those giant peahats that has like giant swords and chases you down.
And then it shoots its little babies that are basically Beyblades at you.
Yeah. So, like maybe that's why it's like no, Kokiri, you can't go out of the forest.
You can't. They're defenseless. They're children, man.
Yeah. And then, like, while they're in the forest, maybe, like, the Deku Tree is able to protect them or whatever. So,
like, with some magic or something, yeah. But I think, like, Ganondorf did go into Kokiri Forest because the Deku Tree talks about how Ganondorf came to him and asked for the spiritual stone, right?
Okay, say that again?
When, in Ocarina of Time, the Deku Tree tells Link how Ganondorf like came to him and demanded the sacred stone from him, right? And the Deku Tree refused, so Ganondorf cursed him, right? So that means that he did go there. He did go to Kokiri Forest.
So here's the thing. Ganondorf wasn't strong enough to just kill the Deku Tree right off. He could only like curse him or whatever with Queen Goma.
Yeah.
So
because he didn't have the Triforce of Power yet.
Yeah, so he wasn't power enough because in reality he can use magic and stuff just like Twin Rova, but he's not like this overpowered person yet. But after he gets the Triforce, he's able to like make his own phantom version in the forest or whatever. But the I might actually make a video about all this because it's all coming to me.
Oh, we should.
But the Deku Tree, he's not because the Deku Tree is a magical deity. Like it's not just here's this talking tree. Like the Deku Tree is looked at as like the god of the Kokiri Forest. In the same way,
he's like their patron, guardian, protector.
And in the same way that the what are they called? Are they the divine beasts? The beasts or whatever they are, the divine spirits in Twilight Princess?
The light spirits.
Yeah, the light spirits. So the light spirits in Twilight Princess, they have their magical powers or whatever, just like the Deku Tree has their magical powers, or it has his magical powers. So, with him having the power, Ganondorf wasn't strong enough to defeat him or whatever, and then he got cursed. Ganondorf left, and then Link presumably was. Oh, could that be? Okay, so Link had the dream of Ganon attacking him outside Hyrule Castle. That's when the game starts. Could it be the same day that night, whenever Link was having that nightmare, Ganondorf, that was the night Ganondorf came to Kokiri Forest.
So he
to curse
presence almost.
Yeah, to curse the Deku Tree, and the Deku Tree being cursed and everything was what
he was like, okay, we gotta get this started.
Yeah, and then the next morning, immediately after Ganondorf leaves, because he has to go to the castle. Because you see the scene where he's meeting with Ganondorf, so he leaves, goes to the castle. After he leaves, the Deku Tree talks to the fairy, sends the fairy, Navi, whatever you want to call her, to go wake up Link. So do you think, because I always thought this was a week ago, but the Deku Tree kept it secret, but do you think it was the same day that Ganondorf comes there? And then his presence, as you said, Link felt it because he's the chosen one or whatever. So,
could be, yeah. And then he has this sort of premonition about his encounter with Ganondorf.
Yeah, from feeling his presence.
Yeah, and then it makes sense that the Deku Tree felt okay, this is a threat that's happening, and I know that this kid is a chosen hero, so maybe it's now we set this plan into motion and get this kid started. It would make sense that if Ganondorf had gone to Kokiri Forest and cursed him, that would set the events into motion, that he would want to send Navi okay, now's the time. Let's get this party started.
So here's my other theory. Because they found out or somehow realized, and this the real world answer, the developers are probably just no, we wanted to put it there because we thought it would be funner. So that obviously that's always the real world answer, but the in-game lore theory thing, speculation, because this is all just made up anyways, but could the reason that in A Link to the Past and Twilight Princess, the two games immediately following the Hero of Time, where it's not flooded by water, Hyrule's not flooded by water like it is in Wind Waker. So in Twilight Princess and A Link to the Past, in both games immediately following Ocarina of Time, 100 years or whatever later, the Master Sword is in the Lost Woods.
Yes.
In both games. They put the Master Sword in the Lost Woods because they knew Ganondorf or whoever wouldn't be able to get it there.
Because the Master Sword was no longer sealed in the temple of behind the door of time, right?
Right.
So, but in Twilight Princess, it's both. It's in the Temple of Time in the Lost Wood.
Yeah.
Right? So my thought was when I was playing Twilight Princess for the first time and I got to the Master Sword, the area there, it was definitely the ruins of the Temple of Time, right? And then you find out later, it's confirmed that it is. You actually go in through the door of time there and then are transported back to when the temple was intact, right?
Yeah.
So my assumption was that this is the same area as in A Link to the Past in the Lost Woods, or supposedly, right? Again, the geography doesn't line up. That's just how Zelda games are. But that this was supposed to be the same area, and that in A Link to the Past, the Temple of Time was sort of in ruin even more, to the point that all that was left, or at least all that we were shown, was that the pedestal, basically. But the temple ruins were there. But in Twilight Princess, we have more of a view of it. So you sort of have these three stages of it.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Breath of the Wild throws all that out the window by having the Temple of Time, the Lost Woods separate where the Master Sword is. But
that still goes with the only place Ganondorf or whatever his evil couldn't reach through the Lost Woods, because he would turn into whatever. So in Breath of the Wild, it's why it's in like right in front of the Deku Tree, where it's protected, because you have to go through the Lost Woods and everything. But here's another thing.
Okay.
So the Kokiri Emerald, a lot of people assume, or I guess I always assumed until 2 minutes ago, that the Deku Tree had the Kokiri Emerald the entire time, just wouldn't give it to Ganondorf.
Yeah.
But you see the Kokiri Emerald come straight from the sky. Right? Like it just comes down, Link holds his hand up, does the whole thing. Like he does.
I always just assumed it's because of the Deku Tree hands. So they just...
No, so this is what I'm doing. Instead of it being like inside the Deku Tree or whatever, which is what I assumed, like Ganondorf went to the Deku Tree to get the Kokiri Emerald because maybe it was like inside of the Deku Tree somewhere. But what I was thinking is you aren't really told the importance of the Forest Temple. It's just like a giant mansion or whatever in like a giant spooky haunted mansion in the Lost Woods or the Sacred Grove. You're never supposed to go there as a kid. You're only supposed to get there with the hookshot or whatever. So
because the stairs broke.
Ganondorf can't really fly or whatever until he gets the Triforce of Power. So, or actually he gets the Triforce, but then the Triforce of Power is like bound to him or whatever. So with Ganondorf getting the Triforce of Power, then he has the ability to go through the Lost Woods or whatever without whatever, like getting hurt. And that's why suddenly Deku Tree's dead, no longer under the Deku Tree's protection. Ganondorf has the power of the Triforce. So now, unlike he could before, he can go anywhere that he wants. Which is why, originally, what if the Temple of Time, the importance of it was that is where the Kokiri Emerald was, like, safeguarded.
In the Forest Temple?
Yeah.
Oh.
At the very end of the Lost Woods, where nobody could get to it, because they would turn into a Stalfos or whatever. And because you aren't really told the importance of it, it's just there. So what if that's why? Like, that's why it's important.
That is a possibility. I mean,
because that's where it was.
It makes sense.
Ganondorf couldn't get to it because he can't go through the Lost Woods. So he poisons the Deku Tree. And then after you prove yourself to the Deku Tree, he warps it from the area that I assume it's like the bottom part where you fight Phantom Ganon. Do you know, like in the Forest Temple?
So that was like the where it was.
Yeah, because it's not just in the Forest Temple; it's like buried underneath it.
Yeah.
You know? So, because Ganondorf couldn't get to it, because he can't go through the Lost Woods, after he gets the Triforce of Power, as like a way of getting back at, because before he couldn't get to the Sacred Grove or whatever and like get into the Forest Temple, but now he has the power. So not only does he curse Kokiri Forest or whatever to like get back at them, but he hangs like sort of as like an FU to the Deku Tree and all of the Kokiri. He like curses the Forest Temple, puts the pictures of the ghosts up to like haunt it so no one can really go in there. And then he hangs pictures of himself everywhere. So it's like before
for Phantom Ganon.
Yeah, like because then he's like, I can't make it there. Like there's no way I can get there, but now I can. So now I'm gonna like project my own ghost or whatever there to haunt it as like a way of being like, I wasn't allowed there before, now I can, so this is what I'm doing. Does that make sense?
It does. No, like I can't think of anything to prove otherwise, right? Like it holds up.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
yeah.
As like the other spiritual stones are pretty much guarded like by Jabu Jabu, and the thing is the spiritual stone of fire, the Goron ruby,
Isn't it like in the very
just sort of
center?
suspended.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like right above Goron City, right?
Yeah.
So
I think the idea behind that, the Gorons couldn't walk across the tightrope, and they always talk about eating it like it would taste so good.
yeah,
So they put it in the one spot that they couldn't get to.
yeah, so that you would have to be some sort of weird ninja Goron to get it.
Yeah.
But where I think the Zora Sapphire was just safeguarded by the King Zora, like the royal family, right?
Yeah. Like the wedding or
so,
the engagement gift.
But because you don't have this sort of like race of people to protect it, like if you were to go steal the Goron ruby, like if they knew that, you'd have to fight all the Goron, basically, probably, right? But the Kokiri, they can't protect it themselves, so it would make sense that they would have to, the Deku Tree would have to just hide it somewhere where it would be impossible for someone to get it.
Yeah, not just Ganondorf, but anyone.
But yeah,
and also another thing, what I was saying about Ganondorf, at first he can't fly, but then when you fight him at the end of the game, he can. Otherwise, when he's chasing after Zelda and Impa on the horseback, instead of just like riding the horse behind her, he would have just like flown after her, right? Because that would have been cooler, I think. But anyways, he didn't have the Triforce, the power of the Triforce then, so he couldn't fly. So as further protection to safeguard, they were like, well, even if he does get through the Lost Woods, we need to make sure that he doesn't get inside the temple to get the thing. So then this huge staircase you have to go up to get there, they destroy it. And that's why the staircase is destroyed. So just in case he does get there, he still can't get up to the temple.
Also, unrelated, but the Forest Temple is seriously an awesome dungeon.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about it. It's a really well-designed dungeon.
That also adds to why this, presumably like a mansion or a house that you would imagine someone built and lived there a long time ago. And they're like, well, why does it have all these obstacles and stuff? Yeah. But then it's like, well, maybe it was designed that way as like a second security safeguard to keep people out.
Yeah. Yes, it makes sense.
That's our theory that we just came up with that.
Really, you just came up.
Okay,
I'm just along for the ride.
Yeah, but you added in like the other spiritual stones and stuff. So I may actually, unless someone in the chat that just heard me talk about that ends up posting a video on it. I'm watching you, RPG. I may try to flesh that out into like a short 5-minute theory script.
Yeah.
Because I can't think of anything to go against it. Can you?
No.
Like, I'm sure I'll think of something later, but...
Yeah, probably when we're not like on the spot. Like, or it'll be when I'm not trying to think about it and then something will pop in my head, but that's just how it goes.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of the mailbag. And to the end of the podcast. So,
this is probably our longest one yet.
Yeah, let's see here. 3 hours and 25 minutes. Oh my gosh.
It's okay. It was one of the more fun ones.
It was. I was excited. The Zelda dungeon topic, the A Link to the Past, or not A Link to the Past. What was it? The Wind Waker Game Boy Advance remake. Yeah. So yeah,
lots of good stuff.
A lot of good stuff. All right. So for everybody watching, thank you. Hope you enjoyed. If you have questions that you would like to have answered on our next video, what can they do, Daniel?
You can comment in places. You can join our Discord. You can check out Patreon if you want to be priority one questions.
Yeah.
But you know, this isn't to say that we will ignore questions that are not from Patreon. Like,
yeah, sometimes we get too many questions, and to try and keep the show short, like we didn't do this time, we aren't able to answer every single question. So if you want to make sure that your question doesn't get skipped over, you can go to patreon.com/GameOverJesse. Like,
yes,
we had.
But you should also make sure that we haven't answered your question already.
Yes.
If you have a question really burning you up, go check out what we've already.
If you have a question
which
about
questions we've already answered.
If you have a question about the next Zelda game, chances are we probably already answered.
We probably talked about it. Yeah.
So on today's episode, we had 3 Patreon supporters who asked a question, which is quite different than normal. We usually just get it from YouTube. But Casey, George, and Michelle, thank you all for...
Thanks for your questions, guys.
Yes, and thank you everybody who was watching this live. Thank you, Daniel, for not running
Thank you,
away
Jesse.
being the co-host.
Thank you for co-hosting with me, Jesse.
Yes. All right, guys. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
All right.